The screams of the enslaved Ventaxian female echo through the unmarked vessel's corridors as Gary Burns crouches in the maintenance shaft, his jaw clenched at the sound of another extraction procedure being performed. The former Earth military commander hadn't expected to find this horror when he tracked the distress beacon to this drifting ship in neutral space. Through the shaft's ventilation grating, Gary observes the Ventaxian woman Quinn. According to the ship's manifest, her bioluminescent skin pulsing weakly as the Centaurian guards harvest her healing enzymes. Her silver eyes remain fixed on two younger Ventaxians huddled in the corner of the cargo hold, their own light patterns flickering in distress. The ship's manifest reveals the ugly truth. This vessel is part of a massive trafficking operation. Hundreds of Ventaxians, their peaceful civilization recently conquered by the Centaurian Empire, are being transported to processing facilities across multiple sectors. Their natural healing abilities, once used to benefit others, are now being painfully extracted for profit. Gary checks his tactical display. Captain Vexler and his 5-member security team returned from the nearby outpost 10 minutes ago. They move with practiced efficiency, preparing their cargo for transport to a permanent facility. The captain's voice carries through the ship, harsh and guttural as he barks orders to his crew. The diplomatic implications weigh heavy on Gary's mind. Earth's official stance of non-intervention in alien conflicts ties his hands, at least officially. But the evidence of Centaurian atrocities fills every corner of this vessel. The documentation in the ship's computer details a network of exploitation stretching across star systems. Quinn's attempts to shield the younger Ventaxians haven't gone unnoticed. Each time the guards approach the children, she draws attention to herself, accepting additional abuse to protect them. The connection between them is clear in every protective gesture, every shared pattern of light that pulses between them. From his hidden position, Gary begins mapping the ship's layout, identifying security positions, and calculating odds. His military training kicks in as he formulates a rescue plan. The risks are enormous. One wrong move could spark an interstellar incident between Earth and the Centaurian Empire. But as another scream tears through the ship, Gary knows he can't walk away. The cargo hold's clinical brutality tells its own story. Extraction equipment lined up in precise rows, restraint chairs fitted with enzyme collection systems, and the unmistakable evidence of repeated procedures staining the deck. This isn't just a random slave transport, it's a mobile harvesting facility designed to process living beings into marketable products. Gary's gaze shifted from the stained deck to his neural implant's tactical display. The ship's schematics overlaid his vision as his military-grade hardware interfaced with the vessel's systems. A separate power signature caught his attention. The life support systems operated independently from the main reactor, running on an auxiliary unit. "Begin preparations for departure," Captain Vexler's voice boomed through the corridors. "We're behind schedule for delivery to the processing facility." The command triggered activity throughout the ship. Gary tracked the security team's movements through his neural feed. Security Chief K.R.'s led his squad with military precision, their patrol patterns regular and predictable, a vulnerability Gary could exploit. He established a remote link to his own ship's AI. "Arya, initiate Protocol 7 Beta." "Acknowledged," the AI responded through his neural channel, generating false Centaurian distress beacon, broadcasting from coordinates Mark 37 in the nearby asteroid field. The effect was immediate. Security monitors showed 3 of KR's team members boarding a shuttle, leaving to investigate the phantom distress call. Gary accessed a maintenance terminal, fingers dancing across the interface as he connected his neural implant. The environmental controls responded to his commands, allowing him to adjust the oxygen-nitrogen mix in targeted sections of the ship. Through the grating, he observed Dr. Xandar entering the cargo hold. The Centaurian medical officer moved with clinical detachment, checking displays and preparing equipment for another extraction session. Quinn's bioluminescent patterns shifted as the doctor approached, her silver eyes never leaving the two younger Ventaxians in the corner. Subject shows decreased enzyme production, Dr. Xandar noted, inputting data into a medical console. Recommend increased extraction frequency before transfer to permanent facility. The ship's manifest had named the younger Ventaxians as Lyra and Tail Quinn's siblings. Their shared light patterns pulsed in sync, a family connection that transcended their desperate circumstances. Quinn's depleted bioluminescence flickered as she projected what energy she had left toward them, offering comfort through their species' natural ability. Security Chief Kr's heavy footsteps echoed through the corridor. "Something feels off," he growled, his movements slightly sluggish from the modified atmosphere. "Run a full ship diagnostic." "Initiating scan," the ship's computer responded. "Estimated completion time, 20 minutes. Gary checked his tactical display. The remaining security team members showed signs of decreased alertness, their movements becoming less coordinated as the altered atmosphere took effect. Dr. Xandar continued his preparations, unwittingly revealing access codes and security protocols as he worked. The sophisticated medical equipment lining the walls told its own story: neural interfaces, enzyme preservation units, and biological containment systems worth millions of credits on the black market. Each piece represented evidence of the Centaurian Empire's crimes. Quinn watched Dr. Xandar's movements with calculated attention, her silver eyes tracking every security code and access sequence. Despite her weakened state, her mind remained sharp. She positioned herself between the doctor and her siblings, her depleted bioluminescence pulsing with protective intensity. Gary's neural implant compiled the tactical data. 20 minutes until the diagnostic completed, 2 security officers remaining on board, and 1 medical officer focused on preparation tasks. The modified atmosphere had created a temporary advantage, but the window of opportunity would close quickly. Through the maintenance shaft's grating, he observed the cargo holds layout one final time. The extraction equipment, the security positions, the access points, each detail fed into his developing rescue plan. His neural implant processed multiple scenarios, calculating success probabilities based on the gathered intelligence. The ship's warning system remained silent, unaware of the subtle atmospheric changes affecting its crew. In the corner, Lyra and Tails' diminished light patterns synchronized with their sister's protective pulses, their shared connection providing strength even in their weakened state. Gary accessed the maintenance terminal one final time, initiating his carefully planned sequence. Power fluctuations rippled through non-essential systems, creating cascading alerts across multiple decks. The remaining security officers' footsteps echoed through the corridors as they moved to investigate, their movements still sluggish from the modified atmosphere. Multiple system failures detected in sections 3 through 7, the ship's computer announced, its automated voice drawing the guards away from the cargo hold. Gary extracted himself from the maintenance shaft, his movements precise and controlled. The medical bay's sterile lighting cast harsh shadows as he approached Dr. Xandar from behind. The Centaurian doctor remained focused on calibrating the extraction equipment, unaware of the human's presence. A swift strike to a neural cluster at the base of Dr. Xandar's skull dropped him without a sound. Gary secured the unconscious doctor with magnetic restraints, then accessed the medical computer using the observed security codes. His neural implant interfaced with the system, downloading detailed records of enzyme extraction procedures, subject data, and facility locations. Quinn's silver eyes tracked his movement as he entered the cargo hold, her weakened bioluminescence barely visible in the dim light. Her siblings huddled closer as Gary approached. "I'm here to help," Gary whispered, deactivating their containment fields with Dr. Xandar's credentials. Quinn stumbled as the field disappeared, her legs buckling after weeks of confinement. Gary caught her before she fell, noting the cool temperature of her skin and irregular pulse of light beneath its surface. He retrieved medical supplies from the nearby storage unit, administering regenerative compounds to all three siblings. "This will help stabilize you for transport," he explained, watching their bioluminescence strengthen slightly as the treatment took effect. Heavy footsteps in the corridor froze them all in place. Captain Vexler's massive frame appeared in the doorway, his eyes narrowing at the scene before him. Gary ducked behind a cargo container as the captain's hand moved toward the alarm panel. "Security breach in cargo hold 1. Vexler's voice boomed through the ship's comm system. Blast doors began descending throughout the vessel. Gary's neural link pulsed. "Arya, execute power surge protocol." The ship's lighting flickered and died as emergency systems failed. In the darkness, Gary activated his tactical overlay, tracking Vexler's heat signature. The captain advanced, shock baton crackling with energy. The first exchange of blows demonstrated the Centaurian's superior strength. Gary absorbed a punishing strike to his ribs, rolling with the impact to maintain his footing. His neural implant analyzed Vexler's movement patterns, identifying weaknesses in the captain's oxygen-deprived state. Gary feinted left, then struck at Vexler's overextended right side. The captain's slower reactions gave Gary the opening he needed. He grappled the shock baton, his neural implant interfacing with its power cell. The weapon's charge reversed, sending Vexler crashing to the deck. "This way." Gary directed the Ventaxians toward the maintenance access panel. Quinn supported her siblings as they entered the narrow corridor. Security alerts blared through the ship as the two remaining officers rushed back toward the cargo hold. Gary's neural feed displayed their positions as red dots moving through the ship's schematics. "Arya, seal bulkheads in sections 4 and 6, he commanded. Metal barriers slammed into place, forcing the guards to take longer routes. The maintenance corridor led them toward Gary's ship, but Quinn's strength was failing. Her bioluminescence dimmed with each step, the regenerative compounds unable to fully counteract weeks of enzyme extraction. A proximity alert flashed in Gary's vision. The security team's shuttle was returning from the asteroid field. 3 more hostile contacts would reach the ship within minutes. They reached the junction point between vessels. Gary's airlock stood 20 meters away, but multiple threats converged on their position. Behind them, the guards had bypassed one set of sealed bulkheads. Ahead, the returning shuttle would dock within minutes. Time compressed around them as Gary assessed their rapidly diminishing options. Gary's neural implant flashed urgent warnings as multiple threats converged. The returning shuttle's docking sequence initiated with a metallic thud that echoed through the hull, while thermal signatures of the pursuing guards blazed on his tactical overlay. "Arya, begin emergency docking protocols," he commanded through the neural link. "Prepare medical bay for 3 Ventaxian patients." Quinn stumbled, her grip on Lyra loosening. The young girl's bioluminescence flickered weakly, barely visible in the dimmed corridor. In Gary's arms, Tail had already lost consciousness, his light patterns completely dark. A harsh voice cut through the ship's comm system. "Restore atmospheric controls," Security Chief Karst ordered. "Override code Lambdesvenin." The maintenance corridor's pressure began dropping instantly. Warning klaxons blared as emergency seals activated. Gary's tactical display showed the pursuing guards closing in, using thermal imaging to track their position through the ship's walls. "Initiating countermeasures," Gary transmitted to Arya. His neural implant accessed the slave transport's emergency systems, triggering the fire suppression protocols. White foam burst from ceiling ports, filling the corridor with thick, sensor-blocking material. The thermal signatures of their pursuers became distorted blobs in his tactical overlay. They reached Gary's ship's airlock. The door cycled open with agonizing slowness as the foam continued to spray around them. Quinn practically fell through the opening, supporting Lyra with the last of her strength. Gary followed with tail, sealing the airlock behind them. "Medical bay now," he directed, helping Quinn navigate the short corridor to the treatment room. The environmental settings were already shifting as Arya processed the stolen medical data, adjusting temperature and atmospheric composition to Ventaxian requirements. Hydraulic clamps engaged with a thunderous impact as the returning security team docked their shuttle. Gary's tactical feed showed them joining the pursuit, coordinating with KR's team to surround the cargo ship. "External defense systems activated," Arya reported. "Captain Vexler is targeting our engine assemblies. Shield strength at 80% and declining." Gary initiated emergency launch sequences while simultaneously connecting medical monitors to the three siblings. Quinn's silver eyes tracked his movements as she shared vital information about Ventaxian biological needs, her voice barely audible over the sound of weapons fire impacting the shields. "Our core temperature range is lower," she explained, helping attach sensors to Lyra. "The enzyme extraction disrupts our thermal regulation." Arya adjusted the environmental controls accordingly. Shield strength at 60%, detecting cutting tools at airlock 2. Gary's fingers flew across the medical console, programming treatment protocols based on the data stolen from Dr. Xandar's computers. The cargo ship's basic medical facilities weren't designed for Ventaxian physiology, but they could provide essential life support if properly calibrated. Long-range sensors detect 2 Centaurian patrol vessels responding to distress signal, Arya announced. "Estimated arrival, 28 minutes. "Begin recording all sensor data," Gary instructed while administering stabilizing compounds to Tail. "Download everything from the slave transport's computers. We need evidence of their operation." Quinn's bioluminescence pulsed weakly as she monitored her siblings' vital signs. "Tail's core temperature is still dropping," she reported, her silver eyes reflecting the medical bay's harsh lighting. The ship shuddered as another barrage from the defense turret struck their shields. "Shield strength at 40%, Arya warned, detecting hull stress at multiple points. Gary accessed the ship's power distribution network through his neural implant. "Rerouting power from cargo systems to forward shields. Prepare for emergency thrust on my mark." The cutting tools at the airlock created an escalating whine as they breached the outer seal. Gary's tactical overlay showed KR's team positioning breaching charges around the airlock frame. They had minutes at most before the Centaurians gained entry. Tail's medical monitors screamed warnings as his vital signs plummeted further. The young Ventaxian skin had taken on a gray pallor, his natural bioluminescence completely dark. Quinn moved to his side, placing her hands on his temples and initiating a direct energy transfer through their species' natural abilities. Her own light patterns dimmed further as she channeled what little strength she had left to her brother. "Patrol vessels adjusting course for intercept," Arya reported. "Shield strength at 30%. Outer airlock seal compromised." Gary completed the power rerouting sequence, watching shield strength stabilize temporarily. His neural implant interfaced with the navigation systems, calculating escape vectors while monitoring the deteriorating situation at the airlock. The stolen medical data continued streaming into the ship's computers, documenting years of systematic exploitation. The breaching charges detonated with a concussive blast that rattled through the hull. Gary's neural link pulsed with activity as he accessed the ship's maintenance protocols. External repair drones activated, their servos whirring as they emerged from their docking stations. Through his implant, he redirected their industrial cutting tools toward the magnetic clamps securing the two vessels together. Arya, divert auxiliary power to medical bay life support, he commanded, monitoring Tail's declining vital signs. The medical fabricator hummed to life, processing the stolen data to synthesize replacement enzymes. Quinn watched the process intently, her silver eyes reflecting the fabricator's status indicators. The first drone's laser cutter sliced through hydraulic lines, releasing pressurized fluid that froze instantly in the vacuum. Metal groaned as the initial clamps separated. Kayarsk's voice echoed through the hall as he coordinated the breaching team's efforts at the airlock. Administering synthetic enzymes, Arya announced. The medical system delivered the compound to Tail and Lyra's circulation. Their bioluminescence flickered weakly, but the dangerous downward spiral of their vital signs began to slow. A thunderous impact rocked the ship as the breaching charges detonated. Gary accessed the environmental controls, flooding the airlock chamber with coolant. The temperature dropped instantly, ice crystals forming across the partially breached seal. Warning indicators flashed across his neural display as the coolant reserves depleted. 2 clamps severed, Arya reported, detecting targeting lock from slave transport weapon systems. Energy beams struck the hull, precision hits that sent cascading failures through the atmospheric processors. Quinn stumbled as the deck shifted beneath her feet. She steadied herself against a console, her weakened bioluminescence pulsing with effort. Rerouting life support through secondary systems, Gary transmitted, his neural implant interfacing with multiple ship systems simultaneously. The third clamp separated with a metallic shriek, but the final connection remained stubbornly intact. Its reinforced plating deflected the drone's cutting beams. Quinn pushed herself upright. "The bridge," she whispered, her voice strained. "I can help." Gary's tactical overlay showed the frozen airlock beginning to crack as Kayarsk's team applied thermal charges. The patrol vessel's signatures grew stronger on long-range sensors. He activated the cargo loading mechanisms, massive hydraulic arms normally used for moving freight containers. Quinn made her way to the bridge as the arms engaged, straining against the final clamp. The ship's structure groaned under the pressure. Hull integrity warnings flashed across multiple displays as microfractures began forming along stress points. Tractor beams from the slave transport activated, their energy fields visible through the bridge viewport as they countered the cargo arms force. The opposing pressures twisted metal and composite materials beyond their design tolerances. Quinn's natural bioluminescence provided just enough light as she studied the auxiliary control panels. Her fingers moved across the interface with practiced familiarity, accessing systems she'd observed during her captivity. "The tractor beam power distribution," she explained, indicating specific readings. "It routes through unshielded relays." Gary's neural implant processed the information, calculating potential vectors of attack. The hull breach warnings reached critical levels as more microfractures spread across both vessels. Through the medical bay's sensors, he monitored Tail and Lyra's response to the synthetic enzymes. Their conditions remained precarious, but the immediate crisis had stabilized. Ice chunks broke free from the airlock as Kayarsk's team began breaking through. The patrol vessels adjusted course, now 12 minutes from weapons range. Gary accessed the cargo ship's power distribution network, preparing to exploit the weakness Quinn had identified in the slave transport systems. Metal screamed as the final clamp began to tear, the combined forces threatening to rip both ships apart. Gary's neural implant processed Quinn's observation about the tractor beam's power distribution. Through the data streaming across his tactical overlay, he identified the vulnerable relay nodes in the slave transport systems. The unshielded power conduits created a critical weakness, one that could give them their chance at freedom. "Arya, divert power from artificial gravity to electromagnetic pulse generators," Gary transmitted through the neural link. "Match frequency to tractor beam power signature." The deck plating vibrated as artificial gravity decreased to 20%. Quinn gripped the console to stay upright as Gary channeled power through the ship's electrical systems. His neural implant calculated the precise frequency needed to disrupt the tractor beams. "Warning, hull stress reaching critical levels," Arya announced. "Structural failure imminent." Gary triggered the electromagnetic pulse. Energy cascaded through the slave transport's vulnerable relay nodes. The tractor beams flickered, their hold weakening for a fraction of a second. He slammed the emergency thrusters to maximum thrust. Metal shrieked as the final magnetic clamp tore free. The violent separation sent both ships reeling. Through the viewport, Gary watched electrical discharges dance across the slave transport's hull as their power conduits overloaded. The victory proved costly. Warning indicators flooded his neural display as the emergency thrust damaged their engine cooling systems. "Primary coolant reserves depleted," Arya reported. "Engine temperature critical. Maximum sustained thrust limited to 10 minutes." A cry of distress echoed from the medical bay. Quinn pushed off from the bridge console, her silver eyes wide with fear. "Tail." Gary accessed the medical sensors through his implant. Tail's vital signs plummeted despite the synthetic enzyme treatment. The basic medical facilities weren't enough to stabilize his condition. Quinn rushed to her brother's side as Gary analyzed their options. His neural implant mapped nearby space lanes, highlighting a dense asteroid field ahead. The unstable mineral deposits would interfere with Centaurian tracking systems if they could navigate through the hazardous debris. 3 vessels launching from slave transport hangar, Arya announced. "Interceptor class. Weapons active." The tactical display showed KRs leading the pursuit squadron in a coordinated attack pattern. The interceptors accelerated rapidly, their superior engines quickly gaining ground. Emergency force fields flickered across multiple hull breaches, draining precious power from their strained systems. Gary diverted energy from non-essential systems, trying to maintain shield strength against the approaching threats. "Shield strength at 20%, Arya warned. "Multiple system failures detected, engine temperature approaching maximum tolerance." The asteroid field loomed ahead, a chaotic mass of tumbling rocks and unstable mineral formations. Gary's neural implant highlighted possible routes through the debris, calculating trajectories based on the asteroid's erratic movements. In the medical bay, Quinn worked frantically to stabilize Tail. Her own bioluminescence pulsed weaker with each passing moment as she channeled energy to her brother. Lyra lay unconscious on the adjacent bed, her vital signs barely holding steady. "Interceptors entering weapons range," Arya reported. "Centaurian patrol vessels 11 minutes from intercept." The first shots from KR's squadron struck their aft shields. Gary initiated evasive maneuvers, piloting the damaged ship toward the asteroid field's outer boundary. Warning klaxons blared as engine temperature continued to rise. Quinn's voice carried from the medical bay, thick with desperation. "His core temperature's dropping again. The synthetic enzymes aren't enough." Gary's neural implant processed multiple data streams simultaneously, tracking pursuers, monitoring ship systems, calculating safe passages through the asteroid field. The stolen evidence of Centaurian crimes remained secure in his neural storage, but that meant nothing if they couldn't survive the next few minutes. The ship shuddered as another volley struck their weakened shields. Ahead, the first fragments of the asteroid field's outer layer spun through space. The unstable mineral deposits created shifting magnetic fields that disrupted sensors and guidance systems. "Warning," Arya announced. "Engine coolant failure imminent. 5 minutes remaining at current thrust levels." KR's interceptors pressed their attack, forcing Gary to weave between tumbling asteroids while maintaining enough speed to stay ahead of their pursuers. The ship's damaged hull groaned under the strain of each maneuver. Gary's neural display lit up with new data as they entered the asteroid field's outer boundary. Arya highlighted intense radiation signatures emanating from the larger asteroid's unstable thorium deposits that could work to their advantage. Thorium radiation detected, Arya announced. Interference patterns match Centaurian targeting frequencies. Gary adjusted their trajectory, weaving between debris clusters where the radiation peaked. Through his neural link, he watched KR's interceptors decelerate, their targeting systems degrading in the electromagnetic noise. The engine temperature warnings flashed red. Coolant pressure dropped to critical levels as the damaged systems struggled to compensate. Gary accessed the atmospheric processors, reprogramming their control protocols on the fly. Arya, synchronize atmospheric venting with hull breach patterns, he transmitted. Convert processors 3 through 7 to engine cooling duty. Quinn steadied herself against the medical bay wall as the ship's atmosphere thinned. What's happening? Emergency cooling measures, Gary replied through the intercom. Stay in the medical bay, it's one of the only sections that will maintain full pressure. The ship shuddered as the atmospheric processors engaged. Excess engine heat vented through the damaged hull sections in carefully timed bursts. Temperature gauges stabilized, though the readings remained dangerously high. In the medical bay, Quinn placed her hands on Tail's temples. Her own bioluminescence had begun to regenerate, silver patterns flickering weakly across her skin. She channeled the energy to her brother, watching his vital signs spike briefly before declining again. Please, she whispered, her voice breaking as she slumped against the medical bed. The transfer left her drained, barely able to stand. Multiple probe launches detected, Arya reported. Centaurian patrol vessels deploying tracking units. Gary's neural implant identified the probe's transmission frequencies. He instructed Arya to broadcast false sensor echoes, creating phantom signatures throughout the debris field. The probe's tracking algorithms struggled to distinguish the real ship from the decoys. A massive collision ahead sent asteroids spinning into new trajectories. Gary's tactical overlay highlighted a narrow corridor through the chaos, barely wide enough for their ship, but too small for the interceptors to follow. Warning: shield power insufficient for debris navigation, Arya announced. Hull integrity compromised in multiple sections. Drop shields, Gary commanded. Divert all power to engines and life support. The ship accelerated through the gap as their shields failed completely. Impacts rattled the hull as smaller debris pieces struck the unprotected surface. Warning indicators multiplied across Gary's neural display. Through the tactical feed, he watched KR's interceptors split formation. They launched electromagnetic mines into the debris field, creating a web of hazards ahead. Gary plotted a course between the mines, each course correction bringing them closer to weapon range. His neural implant detected a faint signal deeper in the field. The data streamed tenacity into a transponder signature, an abandoned mining facility anchored to one of the larger asteroids, forgotten during the Centaurian Empire's expansion. In the medical bay, Lyra's vital signs began fluctuating in sync with Tail's declining readings. Their shared biological systems reinforced the connection between siblings, spreading the cascade failure across both bodies. Quinn pushed herself up from the floor, her silver eyes fixing on the medical bay displays. Their core temperatures are linking, she transmitted through the ship's comm. We need help. Real medical facilities. Gary studied the mining facility's signature through his tactical overlay. The structure offered potential shelter, supplies, and medical equipment if they could reach it. But the approach required threading through the densest part of the asteroid field while under fire. The ship banked hard as an electromagnetic mine detonated nearby. Systems flickered as the pulse washed over their hull. Gary diverted power from artificial gravity, using the extra energy to maintain engine control through the interference. 2. Interceptors moving to block the mining facility approach vector, Arya reported, detecting additional probe launches from patrol vessels. Quinn made her way to the bridge, each step requiring conscious effort as her depleted energy reserves ebbed further. She gripped the navigation console, studying the sensor readings of the facility ahead. The mineral deposits, she said, indicating radiation patterns around the larger asteroids. If we time it right. Gary's neural implant processed the tactical possibilities. The thorium radiation could mask their approach, but one miscalculation would send them straight into the debris field's gravitational forces. An interceptor's energy beam grazed their hull, burning through the already damaged plating. Warning klaxons blared as atmosphere vented from a new breach. The makeshift engine cooling system struggled to compensate for the additional damage. Hull breach on Deck 3, Arya announced. Emergency containment failing. Engine temperature rising. The mining facility grew larger in the viewport as Gary guided their ship deeper into the asteroid field. Orcs' interceptors maintained pursuit, launching salvos of electromagnetic mines to cut off potential escape routes. The patrol vessel's probes swarmed through the debris, their sensors straining to track the ship through the thorium interference. Gary's neural implant calculated approach vectors as Quinn analyzed the radiation patterns. The siblings' vital signs continued their synchronized decline in the medical bay. Each passing moment brought them closer to either salvation or destruction in the heart of the asteroid field. Gary's neural implant detected a faint power signature emanating from the mining facility's emergency systems. He adjusted their trajectory, using the larger asteroid's thorium radiation to mask their approach. Through the viewport, the facility's bulk emerged from the chaos, a massive structure carved directly into a thorium-rich asteroid, its docking arms extending like skeletal fingers into space. The ship lurched as weapons fire from KR's interceptors struck their stern. A massive piece of mining equipment drifted into their pursuit vector. The lead interceptor attempted to evade, but miscalculated the debris field's gravitational effects. Metal screamed against metal as the interceptor's port wing sheared off against the derelict machinery. The damaged vessel spun away, emergency beacons activating. 2 interceptors maintaining pursuit, Arya reported, detecting automated distress signal from damaged vessel. Quinn gripped the navigation console as Gary initiated docking procedures. Her silver skin had dulled to ash gray, energy reserves depleted from trying to stabilize her siblings. The neural interface highlighted multiple docking ports maintenance bays designed for service vessels. Emergency power detected in facility systems, Gary transmitted. Attempting remote access. His neural implant connected to the dormant facility network. Status data flooded his tactical display. Backup life support at minimal function, automated maintenance systems in standby, and sealed storage sections still maintaining atmospheric pressure. A scream from the medical bay cut through the ship's comm system. Quinn pushed off from the console, every movement an obvious struggle. His enzyme systems are failing completely. Arya's medical sensors displayed cascading organ failure in both siblings, but beneath the warning indicators, an anomalous reading caught Gary's attention. The synthetic enzyme treatments showed increased activity when exposed to specific thorium radiation frequencies. Quinn, he transmitted, sending the medical data to her neural link. The radiation, it's affecting the enzyme stability. Her silver eyes widened as she processed the information. The facility's radiation shielding, if we could modify it. The ship shuddered as Gary executed a high-speed approach to the nearest maintenance port. Warning klaxons blared as structural stress exceeded safety limits. The docking clamps engaged with a violent impact that sent tremors through both vessels. Warning, docking port seal compromised, Arya announced. Maintaining atmospheric containment through ship systems. Life support capacity, 28 minutes. The facility's internal scanners activated, mapping sealed sections through Gary's neural interface. A medical storage unit appeared in the schematic, located near the thorium processing center, but the path there led through multiple decompressed corridors with radiation levels far beyond human tolerance. Quinn studied the facility map, her expression hardening. I can make it through. Ventaxian physiology, we evolved with radiation resistance. Your energy reserves are critically low, Gary warned. I don't have a choice. She caught his gaze. They're dying. Gary removed his neural interface module, syncing it to her biological systems. Take this. It will maintain your connection to Arya and the facility networks. The remaining interceptors opened fire on the facility's external structure. Impacts reverberated through the docking arm, creating microscopic fractures in the thorium-rich asteroid. Warning indicators showed growing structural instability. Quinn secured the interface module as Gary diverted power to stabilize their connection to the facility. She moved toward the airlock, each step measured and deliberate. The storage section should have emergency supplies, Gary transmitted through their link. But the structural damage is spreading. Those thorium pockets become unstable if another impact cut him off. Status displays showed the Centaurian patrol vessels adjusting course, moving to surround the facility's outer perimeter. I'll be quick, Quinn promised, entering the airlock staging area. The facility's remaining sensors tracked multiple stress fractures spreading through the asteroid's core. Gary worked to reinforce the docking clamps while monitoring Tail and Lyra's synchronized decline. In the medical bay, their vital signs continued their downward spiral. Through the neural link, he watched Quinn's life signs as she prepared to enter the facility's decompressed sections. The evidence of Centaurian crimes remained secured in his neural storage, but right now, survival took precedence. Everything hinged on the next few minutes Quinn's mission through the irradiated corridors, the facility's structural integrity, and the lives of two siblings linked in a deadly biological cascade. The interceptors adjusted their attack pattern, concentrating fire on the docking mechanism support structure. Gary's tactical display highlighted stress fractures spreading toward pockets of unstable thorium. Each impact brought them closer to a chain reaction that would tear the facility apart. Gary's tactical display highlighted another structural fracture as Quinn stepped into the facility's airlock. The inner door cycled open, revealing a corridor bathed in emergency lighting. Her silver skin cast wavering patterns across the metal walls as she moved forward, each step more stable than the last. Radiation levels rising, Arya transmitted through the neural interface. Detecting increased thorium particle density. Quinn's bioluminescence responded to the radiation, silver patterns brightening as her Ventaxian physiology absorbed the energy. The corridor ahead stretched into darkness, but her natural glow provided enough illumination to navigate by. Direct route to medical storage blocked, she transmitted, studying the facility map through Gary's neural interface. Following maintenance access path, an explosion rocked the facility as KR's interceptors targeted another structural point. Quinn braced against a wall, watching hairline cracks spread through the ceiling. The neural interface displayed a cascade of structural warnings. Patrol vessels destroying outer asteroids, Gary transmitted. 18 minutes until weapons range. Docking clamps holding at 60% integrity. In the medical bay, Lyra's vital signs plummeted. The medical fabricator's interface flashed red as it switched enzyme production from Tail to his sister. Their synchronized biological systems ensured that stabilizing one meant watching the other decline. Quinn reached a junction where the corridor split into 3 branches. Emergency, route markers pointed toward medical storage, their phosphorescent arrows dim after years of abandonment. She followed them through a maintenance shaft, her bioluminescence revealing tools and equipment left behind during the facility's evacuation. Warning, Arya announced through the neural link. Detecting multiple launches from patrol vessels. Analysis indicates boarding torpedoes. The facility shuddered as another thorium pocket detonated. Quinn's enhanced strength returned gradually as she absorbed more radiation. She moved faster through the corridors, following the route markers toward medical storage. KR's forces surrounding facility perimeter, Gary transmitted. Boarding torpedoes will breach in approximately 6 minutes. Quinn reached the medical storage section. A Centaurian military-grade security panel guarded the main entrance, its display cycling through encryption protocols. She located the maintenance access panel nearby, studying its controls through the neural interface. Found alternate entry point, she transmitted, but accessing it requires disabling local radiation shielding. Gary's analysis appeared in her vision. Radiation surge would exceed safe levels for this section, but I've identified another option. The primary support column connecting medical storage to the processing center. If we sever it correctly, I can dock directly with the storage section. Quinn examined the structural data. The thorium containment systems would cascade. The reaction would destroy the pursuit vessels, but the radiation wave. Quinn studied the security panel again. How long for the fabricator to synthesize enough enzymes for both of them? At current production rates, too long. We need those medical supplies. Another impact rattled the facility. The neural interface displayed multiple boarding torpedoes maneuvering into position. Quinn placed her hand on the maintenance access controls, silver skin pulsing with absorbed radiation. If I disable the shielding, how long until the radiation reaches critical levels? 3 minutes maximum. The thorium processing systems are overloading from the structural damage. Quinn's fingers moved across the controls. That's all I need. The radiation shielding powered down with a low hum. Warning indicators flooded the neural interface as thorium particles flooded the section. Quinn pulled open the maintenance access panel, revealing a narrow crawl space beyond. Boarding torpedoes launching, Arya announced. Impact in 4 minutes, 12 seconds. Quinn entered the crawl space, her bioluminescence lighting the way toward medical storage. The neural interface tracked radiation levels climbing steadily around her. She moved as quickly as the confined space allowed, following the maintenance tunnel's curve. Fabricator switching production, Gary transmitted. Tails vitals critical. The crawl space ended at another access panel. Quinn pushed it open, emerging into medical storage. Shelves of supplies lined the walls, preserved by the facility's automated systems. She moved quickly through the aisles, scanning labels through the neural interface. 2 minutes until radiation reaches critical, Arya warned. Boarding torpedoes approaching impact trajectory. Quinn located the enzyme stabilizers, securing several containers in a carry pack. The neural interface highlighted the most direct route back to the ship. She turned toward the maintenance tunnel, then froze as the facility's structure groaned. Through the neural link, she watched stress fractures spreading from the latest torpedo impact. The facility's thorium containment systems approached overload, creating a cascade of warnings across her vision. Time seemed to compress as she faced multiple converging threats: rising radiation, approaching boarding teams, and the facility's imminent structural failure. In the medical bay, both siblings' vital signs continued their synchronized decline. Quinn checked the route back one final time, knowing her next decision would determine not just their survival, but whether the evidence of Centaurian crimes would ever reach those who needed to see it. Quinn accessed the facility's structural data through Gary's neural module, scanning for an alternate route. Her silver skin pulsed brighter as she absorbed more thorium radiation, enhancing her connection to the interface. Gary's analysis flashed across her vision. Wait, the radiation patterns, there's a way to buy us time. His neural processes interfaced directly with the facility's thorium processing controls. Status indicators shifted as he initiated targeted overloads in the containment chambers furthest from Quinn's position. The resulting radiation spikes forced the incoming boarding torpedoes to adjust their trajectories, creating a temporary barrier around their section. "Found something," Quinn transmitted, her enhanced vision detecting a sealed compartment. She pried open the emergency kit, revealing radiation suits designed for Centaurian physiology. These could work for transport. She modified one suit into a makeshift containment vessel, reinforcing its shielding to protect the sensitive medical supplies. Her strengthening bioluminescence interfaced with the facility's systems through Gary's neural module, providing enhanced access to local controls. The facility rocked as Centaurian patrol vessels, led by Fleet Captain Mokhtar, systematically destroyed the outer asteroid field. Each explosion released waves of thorium radiation that penetrated deeper into the complex. "Radiation reaching critical levels for human exposure," Arya announced. 15 minutes until lethal saturation. But Quinn's Ventaxian biology absorbed the increasing radiation, silver patterns brightening across her skin. She felt her natural enzyme production capabilities gradually returning as her cells processed the energy. In the medical bay, warning indicators flashed red. "Complete enzyme failure detected in both patients," Arya reported, maintaining vital functions through alternating synthetic enzyme application. System capacity, 9 minutes, 40 seconds. The medical fabricators housing glowed from continuous operation. Gary diverted power from life support, prioritizing enzyme production over atmospheric maintenance. Security Chief Karsk adjusted his assault pattern. Boarding torpedoes struck the facility's power distribution nodes, sending cascading failures through the structural integrity field. Gary activated emergency backup systems, but power reserves drained rapidly. Quinn breached the final barrier to medical storage, then stopped abruptly. "Gary, this isn't just storage, it's a full military medical bay." The room contained advanced Centaurian medical equipment, including specialized enzyme stabilization units. She located shelves of Ventaxian-specific supplies, tagged with military classification codes. "They were preparing for this," she transmitted, securing the critical supplies in her modified containment suit. Long before the official conquest, warning klaxons blared as the facility's main thorium containment field fluctuated. Gary's neural calculations projected the blast radius of a chain reaction enough to destroy both the Centaurian fleet and their position. "Quinn, the radiation surge before detonation, if we channel it through the medical equipment, it could supercharge your healing abilities. One chance to save your siblings." She sealed the containment suit, checking its integrity. The facility groaned as another torpedo impact sent fractures spreading through the walls. Through their neural link, Gary coordinated power distribution between critical systems while tracking multiple approaching threats. Quinn accessed the facility map, plotting her return route as Gary fine-tuned the timing of his desperate plan. The Centaurian vessels continued their advance, unaware of the building chain reaction in the facility's thorium processing core. Her enhanced connection to the facility's systems highlighted the spreading structural damage, creating a maze of shifting danger zones between her position and the ship. She activated the containment suit seals, watching the radiation indicators stabilize around the precious medical supplies. Outside, the sound of torpedo impacts grew closer as Karsk's forces pressed their attack. Time compressed around them as Gary balanced multiple failing systems, preparing to coordinate their final escape attempt with the approaching thorium cascade. Initiating containment cascade, Gary transmitted through the neural link. His processes interfaced with the facility's thorium management systems, triggering controlled overloads in the outer sections. Radiation indicators spiked across Quinn's vision as the first containment fields failed. The boarding torpedoes adjusted course, their trajectories shifting away from the intensifying radiation zones. Her silver skin brightened in response to the increasing thorium levels, absorbing the energy that would have proven lethal to most species. Centaurian vessels launching new contacts, Arya announced. Configuration matches radiation-hardened assault pods. Quinn watched through the neural interface as armored pods detached from the patrol ships, their shielding designed to withstand the extreme conditions. The pods anchored to the facility's hull, cutting equipment already deployed. She turned her attention to the military medical bay's computer systems, interfacing through Gary's neural module. Research logs filled her vision, detailed accounts of Ventaxian test subjects, enzyme extraction protocols, and facility specifications. They were studying our healing abilities, she transmitted, copying the data while securing additional medical supplies. Testing how to replicate the enzyme processes. The facility shuddered as more torpedo impacts struck key structural points. Warning indicators cascaded through the neural interface as support beams buckled under the combined stress of weapons fire and radiation exposure. Structural failure in 6 minutes, 40 seconds, Arya calculated. Medical fabricator offline. Life support failing for both patients. Quinn sealed the modified containment suit, checking the integrity of the medical supplies stored inside. Her enhanced strength from the radiation exposure allowed her to move quickly despite the added weight. She located the emergency airlock connecting to Gary's secondary docking port, finding its controls damaged by the facility's deterioration. Manual override required, Gary transmitted. Exposure warning radiation shields will temporarily disengage during override sequence. Quinn's fingers moved across the airlock's manual controls as Gary coordinated the override. Her silver skin pulsed brighter, processing the increasing radiation levels. Through the neural interface, she tracked multiple breaching points where Centaurian shock troops cut through the facility's outer hull. Diverting remaining power reserves, Gary announced. Creating radiation-controlled corridor to ship. Emergency life support active 4 minutes, 20 seconds remaining. The airlock cycled open, revealing the short passage to Gary's docking port. Quinn moved through quickly, the containment suit's sensors confirming the medical supplies remained protected. Behind her, the sound of cutting equipment grew louder as Centaurian forces breached another section. Warning klaxons blared as the thorium cascade approached critical levels. Quinn reached the docking port as Gary coordinated the final phase of their escape plan. Through the neural interface, she watched Fleet Captain Mokthar's vessels move into attack position, while KR's remaining interceptors maintained their strategic bombardment. Docking clamps secured, Arya reported. Detecting multiple hostile contacts advancing through outer sections. 3 minutes until complete thorium containment failure. Quinn sealed the docking port behind her, moving quickly toward the medical bay with the precious cargo of supplies and evidence. Gary's systems tracked the approaching Centaurian forces while managing the facility's cascading thorium reaction. The ship's hull vibrated as nearby torpedo impacts continued to weaken the facility's structure. In the medical bay, both siblings' vital signs flickered at critical levels. Quinn accessed the modified containment suit, preparing to administer the stabilizing enzymes as Gary calculated their narrow window for escape. Outside, Centaurian shock troops advanced through the radiation-flooded corridors, while their fleet commanders positioned for the final assault. The ship shuddered as another impact struck the facility. Quinn sprinted toward the medical bay, carrying the precious supplies while Gary's neural processes orchestrated their escape. Through their shared interface, she watched as KR's interceptors systematically targeted structural weak points, creating a web of spreading fractures. Life support critical, Arya announced. Implementing emergency stasis protocols. Quinn reached the medical bay as the fabricator's housing cooled, its reserves depleted. The siblings' vitals continued their synchronized descent on the diagnostic displays. Arya diverted the last synthetic enzymes into a controlled medical stasis field, preserving their critical functions. 3 minutes of stable conditions remaining, Gary transmitted. Initiating thorium cascade sequence. Through the neural link, Quinn observed Gary's precise power transfers between facility systems. Energy readings spiked as he created a directed radiation channel, carefully calculated to disrupt Centaurian targeting systems while propelling their ship through the blockade. The facility's structure groaned as more torpedo impacts struck. Quinn secured the medical supplies, then turned back toward the emergency airlock. The neural interface highlighted severe damage to the seal mechanism's metal warped and circuits fused from structural stress. Manual override required from facility side, Gary transmitted, detecting multiple hostile breaches in adjacent sections. Quinn accessed the airlock's damage assessment through the interface. The override controls glowed red, requiring physical activation from inside the deteriorating facility. She processed the implications someone would need to remain behind to seal their escape route. The sound of plasma cutters echoed through nearby corridors as Centaurian shock troops breached another barrier. Through the neural link, she watched Mokthar's patrol vessels move into attack formation, their assault pods creating an expanding containment grid. Thorium containment at 95% of critical mass, Arya reported. Radiation surge imminent. Quinn's silver skin pulsed brighter as she absorbed more radiation, enhancing her connection to the facility's systems. She watched Gary's neural calculations map a narrow corridor through the Centaurian vessel's overlapping fields of fire. 2 minutes until complete life support failure, Gary transmitted. Override sequence ready. The facility rocked as KR's remaining interceptors maintained their bombardment. Warning indicators flashed across Quinn's vision as the docking clamps began to fail, metal groaning under the structural stress. She accessed the facility's security feeds through Gary's neural module, tracking the methodical advance of Centaurian shock troops through radiation-flooded corridors. Their armored environmental suits allowed them to push through the hazardous conditions, weapons raised as they swept each section. Quinn moved to the airlock controls, fingers hovering over the manual override. The neural interface displayed multiple timing coordinates as Gary balanced power distribution between critical systems. Outside, Mokthar's vessels charged their main weapons arrays for a final barrage. 98% of critical mass, Arya announced. Radiation corridor forming. The facility's remaining structural supports buckled as torpedo impacts continued. Quinn watched fracture patterns spread through the neural interface while calculating variables. The override sequence would take 30 seconds to complete 30 seconds of exposure to near-critical radiation levels. Through their link, Gary's processes mapped escalating threats, shock troops approaching from multiple vectors, failing docking clamps, the siblings' dwindling life support, and the facility's imminent destruction. His neural module held the discovered research logs, crucial evidence of the Centaurian Empire's plans for exploiting Ventaxian biology. Warning klaxons blared as the thorium containment systems approached final failure. Quinn felt her enhanced capabilities strengthening with each radiation spike, silver patterns bright across her skin. She input the first override sequence as Gary coordinated their narrow window for escape. Hostile forces breaching final sections, Arya reported. 90 seconds until complete life support failure. The override panel sparked as Quinn entered the second sequence. Through the neural interface, she watched Centaurian shock troops methodically sweep toward their position, while KR's interceptors maintained their strategic bombardment pattern. Power fluctuated as Gary balanced multiple failing systems, preparing to channel the approaching radiation surge. Quinn's fingers moved across the controls, racing against the facility's structural collapse while Mokthar's vessels closed their containment grid. The next sequence would determine their survival and whether the evidence of Centaurian crimes would reach those who needed to see it. Quinn's fingers paused over the manual override as her enhanced vision detected a maintenance access panel beneath layers of radiation shielding. The panel's circuitry connected directly to the facility's emergency ventilation system still drawing power despite the cascade failure. "Gary, I'm seeing an alternative," she transmitted through their neural link. "Ventilation control circuits. We can reroute power to seal the airlock remotely." "Calculating power distribution scenarios," Gary responded. His neural processes mapped the facility's failing power grid, identifying periodic surges in the radiation field. "Detected variance pattern in thorium emissions, using fluctuations to time our exit vector." Quinn tore away the panel's outer casing, exposing a maze of power conduits. Her silver skin pulsed with absorbed radiation as she redirected the emergency ventilation power through the airlock's control systems. Warning indicators flashed across her vision, 98% of critical mass. The deck plating vibrated as Centaurian shock troops breached the adjacent corridor. Through security feeds, Quinn watched the armored figures deploy mobile shield generators, their specialized suits gleaming under emergency lighting. "Hostile forces establishing containment perimeter," Arya announced. "Shield matrix will block access to docking port in 40 seconds. Quinn's hands moved rapidly across exposed circuits, bypassing damaged systems. The airlock's status indicators shifted from red to amber as power flowed through the repurposed ventilation controls. Outside, Mokthar's patrol vessels took up attack positions, their main weapons charging with building energy signatures. "Medical stasis field stabilized," Gary transmitted. "Reduced power consumption extending viable treatment window by 38 seconds." The facility shuddered as another torpedo impact struck. Quinn secured the final power connection, watching the airlock's indicators shift to green. She grabbed the medical supplies and research data, rushing through the opening doorway as radiation levels spiked again. Her enhanced senses detected the ionization wave building around the facility thorium reactions interfering with the Centaurian assault pod's power cores. Gary's neural processes traced expanding interference patterns through their targeting grids. "Communication disruption detected," Arya reported. "Centaurian targeting systems experiencing 17% degradation." Quinn sprinted through the airlock as KR's shock troops rounded the corner behind her, weapons raised. Her silver skin flickered erratically, radiation absorption reaching critical thresholds. The precious medical supplies remained secured in their containment field as she crossed the short passage to Gary's ship. The docking port sealed behind her as debris fields erupted from multiple hull breaches. Through their neural link, she watched Mokthar's vessels adjust formation, their overlapping fields of fire temporarily disrupted by spreading wreckage. "Thorium cascade at 99%, Gary announced. "Initiating launch sequence. Arya, prepare for emergency medical procedures." Quinn staggered toward the medical bay, her bioluminescence fluctuating wildly. The specialized Ventaxian treatment modules waited in the secured supplies, their radiation-purging capabilities now critical for her own survival. The ship's hull resonated with weapons fire as Gary engaged launch thrusters. Quinn reached the medical bay, connecting the containment field to Arya's treatment systems. Her siblings' vital signs continued their slow decline as she prepared the first round of stabilizing enzymes. "Multiple hostile vessels adjusting attack vectors," Arya announced. "Detecting energy buildup in primary weapon arrays." Gary's neural processes tracked expanding ionization fields, calculating precise timing for their escape vector. Quinn activated the treatment modules, watching specialized Ventaxian compounds begin flowing into the stasis field. Her own silver skin dimmed as radiation levels finally exceeded her absorption capacity. The ship lurched as Gary initiated their escape sequence, using the facility's failing power grid to mask their trajectory. Through their neural link, Quinn watched gaps form in the Centaurian targeting grid as interference patterns spread. Behind them, the thorium cascade reached its final stages, creating waves of energy that rippled through nearby space. "Emergency thrust prepared," Gary transmitted. "Targeting systems locked on calculated gap vector." Quinn secured herself in the medical bay as treatment procedures continued. Her enhanced senses detected KR's interceptors adjusting their bombardment pattern, while Mokthar's vessels struggled to maintain their containment formation. The ship's systems hummed with building power as Gary prepared to execute their escape through the Centaurian blockade. Blockade without power compensation for 2 additional launch vectors. The facility's thorium core breached. Blinding light erupted behind them as radiation alarms screamed through the ship. The explosion's shockwaves slammed into their hull, sending Quinn stumbling against the medical bay wall. Through the neural interface, she watched the facility tear itself apart, scattering superheated debris across space. "Radiation surge detected," Arya announced. "Multiple Centaurian targeting systems offline. Communication networks experiencing widespread disruption." Quinn's hands moved rapidly across the medical equipment's control surfaces, connecting power feeds and initializing the automated enzyme synthesizers. The Ventaxian-specific machinery hummed to life as she transferred Tail and Lyra from the emergency stasis field into the full treatment pods. "Structural damage to starboard thrusters," Gary transmitted. Compensating with portside power redistribution. The ship lurched sideways as another explosion rippled through space. Quinn braced herself against the medical console, watching the diagnostic displays as the cellular regeneration units began their work. Her own silver skin flickered with absorbed radiation, the enhanced capabilities allowing her to reach across to her siblings' treatment pods. Through their neural link, she observed Gary's precise calculations as he wove between expanding debris fields. The ship groaned under asymmetrical thrust, its damaged maneuvering systems straining to maintain their escape vector. Behind them, surviving Centaurian vessels regrouped through the chaos. "Detecting enzyme stabilization," Arya reported. Cellular reconstruction proceeding at 17% above baseline. Quinn placed her hands on the medical pod's transfer interfaces, channeling her radiation-enhanced enzymes into her siblings' treatment cycles. The displays showed immediate improvement in their vital signs, but the effort sent waves of dizziness through her own system. Her bioluminescent patterns stuttered and dimmed. "Multiple hostile contacts reforming pursuit pattern," Gary transmitted. KR's remaining interceptors establishing containment positions. The ship banked hard as an ion pulse cut through nearby space. Quinn steadied herself against the medical bay wall, fighting another wave of vertigo as her enhanced capabilities began to falter. Through the neural interface, she watched Mokthar's patrol vessels launching coordinated attacks, trying to force them into predetermined kill zones. "Warning, detecting additional Centaurian signatures," Arya announced. "Hunter-killer vessels approaching from primary trade routes." Gary's neural processes mapped new escape calculations as civilian ships appeared at the edge of sensor range. The medical bay's displays showed Tail and Lyra's conditions continuing to improve, but Quinn's own diagnostic readings flashed urgent warnings. Her silver skin pulsed erratically as radiation damage spread through her cellular structure. "Structural integrity at 6 to 7%, Gary transmitted, calculating alternative thrust patterns. The ship shuddered as they cut through another debris field, thorium radiation masking their signature from pursuing vessels. Quinn's vision blurred as she monitored her siblings' treatment progress. The specialized Centaurian equipment continued its work, but her own condition deteriorated with each passing moment. Multiple civilian vessels detecting weapons fire, Arya reported. Centaurian pursuit patterns adjusting to avoid witness observation. Through their neural link, Quinn watched Gary plot increasingly complex trajectories through the chaos. Karsk's interceptors maintained visual tracking despite their compromised systems, while Mokhthar's forces attempted to predict their movement through the radiation-filled debris field. The medical bay's warning indicators flashed as Quinn's enhanced state began to collapse. Her fingers slipped from the transfer interfaces as radiation damage overwhelmed her cellular structure. The last readings showed her siblings' treatment continuing automatically, their conditions finally stabilizing even as her own grew critical. Hunter-killer vessels establishing search grid, Gary transmitted, calculating new escape vectors through secondary asteroid clusters. Quinn's silver skin flickered one final time before fading to a dull gray. She slumped against the medical console as radiation exposure took its toll, leaving Gary to navigate their damaged ship through closing rings of Centaurian forces while protecting their vital cargo of medical supplies, recovered siblings, and damning evidence. Gary's neural processors identified a pattern in the facility's spreading debris field. The asymmetrical thrust from their damaged starboard engines created an erratic flight signature, one the Centaurian targeting systems struggled to track through the radioactive interference. Implementing variable thrust pattern, Gary transmitted through the neural link. Structural stress exceeding design tolerances. The ship lurched violently as he deliberately misaligned their engine output. Hull plates groaned under the uneven forces while emergency containment fields flickered across multiple breach points. Diverting power from non-essential systems, Arya announced. Hull integrity at 4 to 3%. Medical bay power flow remained stable. In the medical bay, Quinn's silver skin had faded to a lifeless gray. Her body slumped against the treatment console as radiation damage spread through her cellular matrix. The medical displays showed her vital signs continuing to deteriorate. Arya's sensors detected an anomaly in the recovered research data. Analysis complete. Centaurian facility logs contain detailed radiation treatment protocols for Ventaxian physiology. The ship banked hard as new contacts appeared on their tactical display. A squadron of sleek hunter-killer vessels emerged from FTL, led by the infamous Commander Vexnar. Their specialized sensor drones deployed in a precise geometric pattern, creating a three-dimensional tracking grid that penetrated the radiation interference. Multiple hostile vessels establishing containment formation, Arya reported, detecting experimental targeting systems resistant to radiation effects. Gary watched through ship sensors as Karsk's surviving interceptors coordinated with Vexnar's forces, moving to cut off potential escape vectors. Their precise movements reflected Karsk's intimate knowledge of their earlier evasion tactics. In the medical bay, Tail and Lyra's vital signs strengthened as the advanced treatment protocols took effect. Their proximity to Quinn created an unexpected resonance, their shared biological systems working in concert despite her weakened state. The medical equipment adjusted automatically, optimizing the enzyme production process. Power consumption in medical bay exceeding safety margins, Arya announced, reducing output to non-critical systems. The ship shuddered as another volley of weapons fire cut through nearby space. Gary's neural processors identified a dense cluster of thorium-rich asteroids at the edge of sensor range. The radioactive concentration exceeded Centaurian shield tolerances, but their reinforced hull might survive brief exposure. Warning, structural integrity declining, Arya reported. Hull breach on Deck 3, emergency containment holding. Through the neural link, Gary mapped the Centaurian pursuit formation. Their coverage appeared comprehensive, but the thorium asteroids created a natural gap in their containment grid. The hunter-killer vessels maintained distance from the hazardous region despite their advanced shielding. Medical Bay registering anomalous enzyme production, Arya announced. Tail and Lyra showing accelerated recovery patterns. Detecting potential treatment applications for Quinn's condition. The ship's hull plates screamed under increasing structural stress. Gary's calculations showed 7 minutes until catastrophic failure at their current velocity. Behind them, Vexnar's forces steadily closed the distance, their experimental weapons maintaining target lock through the debris field's interference. Gary adjusted their trajectory toward the thorium cluster as civilian vessels watched from the trade route's outer margins. The ship's reinforced hull groaned with each course correction, while the medical bay's power demands created additional strain on their overtaxed systems. Quinn's vital signs stabilized slightly as her siblings' enhanced recovery generated new treatment possibilities. The Centaurian research data revealed crucial details about radiation exposure protocols, information that might save her life if they survived the next few minutes. Hunter-killer squadron deploying face-lock targeting array, Arya reported, detecting energy buildup in primary weapon systems. The thorium asteroids loomed ahead as Gary pushed their damaged vessel to its structural limits. Behind them, Commander Vexnar's forces moved to seal off their last avenue of escape, their advanced pursuit technology slowly negating the advantages of Gary's erratic flight pattern. Gary engaged a spiral flight pattern through the thorium-rich asteroids, the ship's hull plates vibrating under the strain. Each revolution brought them deeper into the radioactive field while maintaining maximum distance from pursuing vessels. Through the neural interface, sensor data flowed in precise streams, mapping safe passages between the deadly rocks. Radiation shielding at 31%, Arya announced, detecting multiple hull breaches on decks 2 through 4. The ship banked sharply as a Centaurian sensor drone appeared through the radioactive haze. Its scanning beams scattered across the thorium deposits, creating a cascade of false returns that filled tactical displays with phantom signatures. The drone's housing crackled with energy before its systems overloaded, adding another piece of debris to the treacherous field. In the medical bay, diagnostic screens displayed an unexpected pattern. Tail and Lyra's treatment pods generated excess healing enzymes, creating a biological feedback loop that extended to Quinn's prone form. Her silver skin flickered weakly as the shared nutrients began counteracting radiation damage. Enzyme production exceeding normal parameters, Arya reported. Quinn's cellular degradation rate decreasing by 12%. A series of explosions lit up nearby space as Vexnar's forces deployed magnetic pulse mines throughout the asteroid field. The devices spun silently, their energy signatures warping and shifting through interaction with thorium radiation. Gary adjusted their course with microscopic precision, threading between overlapping fields of destructive force. Security Chief KR's transmitting tactical analysis to Hunter-Killer Squadron, Arya announced. Centaurian pursuit pattern adapting to military evasion protocols. The ship's structural integrity alerts flashed red as another section buckled under asymmetrical thrust. Gary sealed off the affected compartments, watching through internal sensors as emergency force fields struggled to maintain atmospheric containment. Power rerouted automatically to critical systems, focusing remaining resources on the medical bay and engine core. Through the asteroid field's shifting masses, Gary's neural processors identified a natural sanctuary. A dense formation of thorium-rich rocks created a hollow space, its radiation levels rendering it invisible to Centaurian sensors. Reaching it meant navigating through the highest concentration of both natural and artificial hazards, but the alternative meant certain capture. Civilian vessels approaching observation range, Arya reported. detecting communication signals from multiple non-Centaurian sources. The ship's hull groaned as Gary initiated their approach toward the asteroid formation. Each course correction brought fresh warnings from overstressed systems, while magnetic mines activated around them, creating webs of destructive energy. Through the neural interface, Gary watched Vexnar's forces accelerate their pursuit, pressed by orders from their superiors to end the chase quickly. Quinn's vital signs strengthened gradually as her siblings' treatment pods continued generating excess enzymes. Her silver skin regained hints of its natural luster, though radiation damage remained extensive. The medical bay's displays showed all three Ventaxians linked in a complex biological exchange, their shared systems working to heal collective trauma. "Warning, structural integrity critical," Arya announced. "Hull breach expanding on Deck 3, emergency containment failing." The ship dove between two massive thorium deposits as magnetic pulses filled nearby space. Centaurian pursuit vessels fired precise bursts through gaps in the asteroid field, their experimental targeting systems partially compensating for the radioactive interference. Gary's neural processors calculated each possible trajectory, searching for a path that would preserve their failing hull long enough to reach sanctuary. Multiple civilian vessels documenting military engagement, Arya reported, detecting increased communication traffic on diplomatic channels. The dense asteroid formation loomed ahead, its natural caverns offering temporary shelter from both pursuit and radiation. Gary diverted additional power to their reinforced hull as they approached the final stretch. Behind them, Vexnar's forces coordinated with KR's interceptors for a decisive strike before their quarry could disappear into the thorium-shrouded refuge. Thorium-shrouded sanctuary. Gary initiated a final course correction, guiding their vessel through a narrow opening between two massive asteroids. The ship's hull scraped against crystalline protrusions as they entered the natural cavern system, sending vibrations through the deck plates. "Initiating automated repair protocols," Arya announced. "Hull integrity at 27%. Maintenance drones activated throughout the vessel, their standard repair sequences disrupted by intense thorium radiation." Gary extended his neural connection to the repair systems, manually directing each drone's movements through the interference. The machines deployed patches and sealant foam across multiple breach points while emergency force fields flickered. In the medical bay, the treatment pods hummed at maximum capacity. Tail and Lyra's enhanced biological processes generated waves of healing enzymes that flooded specialized transmission arrays. Arya redirected the excess through salvaged Centaurian equipment, channeling it into Quinn's radiation-damaged tissue. Quinn's silver skin pulsed weakly as the treatment took effect. Her deeper tissue layers remained compromised, but surface bioluminescence patterns stabilized in response to her siblings' shared biological resources. The cavern walls trembled as Vexnar's forces established their containment perimeter. Specialized mining charges detonated in precise sequences, their shockwaves destabilizing thorium deposits throughout the asteroid formation. Crystalline fragments drifted through space as sections of the natural shelter began collapsing. "Detecting geometric deployment pattern," Arya reported. "Hunter-killer squadron maintaining equidistant spacing around all potential exit vectors." Gary's neural processors analyzed sensor data as KR's interceptors moved to exploit emerging breach points. The security chief's tactical algorithms predicted standard military escape routes, positioning magnetic pulse mines to create zones of disabled ship functionality. A civilian news vessel transmitted live footage from the outer perimeter. The sleek diplomatic courier, Swift Justice, emerged from FTL, carrying political officer Nenter to the growing confrontation. The officer's presence created immediate changes in the Centaurian pursuit pattern as Vexnar adjusted his aggressive tactics. Gary's neural implant detected regular fluctuations in the magnetic pulse fields. The mind's energy signatures warped predictably when interacting with thorium radiation, creating brief windows of sensor blindness. He mapped these patterns while coordinating emergency repairs, calculating precise timing requirements for potential escape routes. Medical Bay registering anomalous radiation effects, Arya announced. Ventaxian bioluminescence creating localized stabilization fields. The combined energy output from all three siblings generated expanding spheres of normalized space within the chaotic thorium environment. These natural sanctuary zones dampened both radiation and magnetic interference, their boundaries shifting in rhythm with the Ventaxians' shared biological processes. Gary integrated this new variable into his tactical calculations. The ship's remaining functional systems aligned with the Ventaxian effect, creating a hybrid defense against the Centaurian containment strategy. Repair drones worked faster within the stabilized zones, sealing hull breaches with greater efficiency. Multiple civilian vessels documenting military action, Arya reported. Diplomatic channels showing increased activity from non-Centaurian sources. Through the neural interface, Gary watched Vexnar's forces adjust their formation under Nenther's scrutiny. The political officer's presence restricted their weapons usage, while civilian witnesses recorded the engagement. Karsk's interceptors maintained aggressive positioning, but their targeting systems remained in passive mode. The ship's hull creaked as another mining charge detonated nearby. Repair drones swarmed over fresh damage while Gary calculated their next move. The Ventaxian siblings' natural radiation dampening effect created a mobile safe zone 1 that could potentially shield them through the Centaurian sensor grid. Treatment cycle reaching critical phase, Arya announced. Detecting synchronized biological patterns across all three subjects. Quinn's silver skin brightened as her cellular structure accepted the shared enzymes. The medical bay's power demands stabilized, while repair systems worked to reinforce their shelter against continuing Centaurian bombardment. Through the ship's sensors, Gary identified their optimal escape vector, a path that would align with both the magnetic interference patterns and the Ventaxians' biological effect. A new series of detonations lit up the cavern system as Vexnar's forces pressed their advantage. Their containment grid tightened methodically, while political officer Nenther's diplomatic vessel maintained position, documenting every action for Centaurian High Command's review. Gary's neural processors identified a pattern in the localized radiation dampening generated by the Ventaxian siblings. Their synchronized biological processes created stable corridors through the thorium field natural pathways invisible to standard sensors. He expanded his neural connection to encompass both navigation and medical systems, mapping these biological sanctuaries in real time. Anomalous radiation patterns detected in Medical Bay, Arya announced. Ventaxian bioluminescence exceeding standard biological parameters. Through internal sensors, Gary observed Quinn strengthening vital signs. Her silver skin pulsed with increasing brightness as the enhanced healing enzymes from her siblings integrated with her cellular structure. The advanced Centaurian medical equipment channeled their shared biological processes with precise efficiency. The ship shuddered as another section of the cargo hold buckled under asymmetrical thrust. Gary sealed the compromised compartments, watching through his neural interface as emergency force fields flickered across multiple breach points. The damaged starboard thrusters created increasing strain on the vessel's structural frame. New energy signatures detected, Arya reported. Centaurian forces deploying resonance disruptors. The devices activated in a synchronized pattern, their frequencies precisely tuned to disrupt ship systems. Emergency force fields fluctuated as the resonance effect interfered with their power distribution. Gary redirected energy through secondary circuits, compensating for the disruption while monitoring the growing instability in nearby magnetic pulse mines. A familiar transponder signature appeared at the edge of sensor range. The Terran Trade Federation transport, Star Wanderer, adjusted its position, its civilian status forcing Vexnar's hunter-killer squadron to modify their firing solutions. Gary recognized the tactical positioning Captain Marcus Simmons employing techniques from their shared military service. Receiving wideband transmission from Federation vessel, Arya announced. Captain Simmons broadcasting sensor data on public frequencies. The thorium radiation scattered standard jamming attempts, allowing Simmons's detailed recordings of the military operation to reach multiple civilian receivers. Political officer Nenter's diplomatic vessel adjusted position as the witness presence expanded. Security Chief Karsk advises immediate aggressive action, Arya reported. Commander Vexnar ordering tactical restraint under political oversight. Gary initiated his escape sequence, guiding their vessel through the stable corridors created by the Ventaxian siblings' enhanced biological effect. The ship's hull groaned as they accelerated toward the densest section of the asteroid field. Repair drones worked at maximum capacity, sealing fresh breaches as the damaged frame absorbed increasing stress. In the medical bay, Quinn's bioluminescence intensified. The thorium exposure had permanently altered her natural abilities, along with those of her siblings. Their synchronized healing processes generated expanding zones of normalized space that counteracted both radiation and Centaurian disruption fields. Multiple hull breaches on remaining decks, Arya announced. Structural integrity declining in sections 7 through 12. The Star Wanderer maintained its position between Gary's vessel and the Centaurian pursuit squadron. Simmons's tactical maneuvers forced Vexnar's forces to divide their attention between multiple vectors while maintaining treaty-compliant engagement protocols. Resonance disruptors created cascading interference patterns throughout the asteroid field. The device's energy signatures reacted with thorium radiation and magnetic pulse mines, generating chaotic zones of system disruption that threatened all vessels in range. Gary plotted their course through the gaps between these unstable regions, relying on the Ventaxian siblings' biological dampening effect to maintain critical ship functions. Warning: Starboard thrust assembly approaching critical failure, Arya reported, detecting severe structural stress across remaining hull sections. Gary integrated the ship's failing systems with the stable corridors generated by the Ventaxians' enhanced abilities. Their vessel accelerated through the densest concentration of thorium asteroids as the Centaurian command structure struggled to coordinate their response. Political officer Nenter's preservation orders conflicted with Karsk's tactical doctrine, creating crucial delays in the pursuit pattern. The Star Wanderer continued broadcasting detailed sensor data as Gary's ship pushed deeper into the asteroid field. Each transmission forced further modifications to Vexnar's engagement protocols while documenting potential treaty violations. Through the chaos of thorium radiation and resonance disruption, Gary guided their vessel toward the narrow path that offered their best chance of survival. Gary channeled additional power to the forward shields as they approached a massive thorium-rich asteroid. His neural interface highlighted the stable pathways generated by the Ventaxian siblings' bioluminescence, revealing a potential route through the asteroid's core. Hull integrity at 18%, Arya announced, detecting multiple system failures across all decks. The ship's frame groaned as Gary executed a precise turn between two crystalline protrusions. Repair drones scattered as a section of deck plating buckled emergency force fields containing the atmospheric breach. He diverted power from non-essential systems, maintaining only life support and engine functions. Behind them, two Centaurian vessels strayed from the radiation-safe corridor. Their shields flickered and failed against the intense thorium radiation. Emergency transponder signals indicated their crews initiating evacuation protocols. Centaurian vessels withdrawing to minimum safe distance, Arya reported. Security Chief KR's adjusting tactical formation. Through the neural interface, Gary observed KR's remaining interceptors targeting specific asteroid clusters. Their weapons' fire destabilized thorium deposits, flooding the region with increasing radiation levels. The tactical algorithm attempted to overwhelm the Ventaxian's natural dampening field. In the medical bay, Quinn's silver skin pulsed with renewed intensity. The treatment pods registered unprecedented levels of biological activity as all three siblings' enhanced capabilities continued evolving. Their synchronized bioluminescence expanded outward, creating a larger sphere of normalized space around the vessel. New signal detected, Arya announced. Federation vessel, Star Wanderer transmitting encrypted data burst. The communication contained detailed sensor readings of the Centaurian military operation, courtesy of Captain Simmons's communications officer. The decrypted tactical channels revealed growing tension in the Centaurian command structure. Political officer Nenter demanding immediate cessation of asteroid bombardment, Arya translated. Commander Vexnar ordered to preserve Ventaxian subjects at all costs. Gary guided their ship toward the massive thorium asteroid ahead. The vessel's structural frame protested as he pushed the failing engines beyond safety limits. Through his neural connection, he monitored the expanding zone of stability generated by the Ventaxian siblings. Warning: detecting new vessel signatures, Arya reported. Multiple radiation-shielded capture ships approaching under Fleet Admiral Xanther's command. The reinforcement fleet's specialized vessels threatened to neutralize their radiation advantage. Gary initiated his calculated risk, directing their ship toward a narrow fissure in the asteroid's surface. The Ventaxian's biological field created a stable tunnel through the thorium-rich rock. Structural integrity critical, Arya warned. Multiple hull sections experiencing catastrophic stress. The ship's remaining functional systems aligned with the Ventaxian's natural dampening effect. Their vessel threaded through the crystalline passage as the asteroid's radiation levels spiked beyond survivable limits. Behind them, KR's interceptors held position, unable to follow without suffering lethal exposure. Federation vessel, Star Wanderer maintaining sensor coverage, Arya reported. Captain Simmons coordinating civilian observation network. Additional civilian ships moved into position around the asteroid field's perimeter. Their presence forced Xanther's approaching reinforcements to modify their attack vectors, buying precious seconds as Gary's ship penetrated deeper into the thorium-rich passage. The medical bay's power demands fluctuated as the Ventaxian siblings' enhanced capabilities responded to the intense radiation. Their combined biological effect carved a path through the asteroid's core, creating a stable corridor that standard sensors couldn't detect. Hull breach on Deck 4, Arya announced. Emergency containment failing in sections 3 through 7. Gary rerouted power through secondary circuits as more systems failed. The ship's structural frame threatened to collapse under the increasing strain. Through the neural interface, he calculated the minimum power requirements to maintain their protective field while preserving life support functions. The vessel emerged from the asteroid's far side into a region of space saturated with thorium radiation. Their wake left a temporary corridor of normalized space one that would collapse before Xanther's reinforcements could safely follow. Encrypted Centaurian communications indicated growing disorder in their pursuit strategy, as political officer Nenter contested KR's aggressive tactics. Multiple system failures cascading through all decks, Arya reported. Detecting critical power fluctuations in remaining functional circuits, Gary directed power to the forward structural braces as their vessel pushed through another section of thorium-rich crystal. The Ventaxian siblings' bioluminescence carved a navigable tunnel through the asteroid's radioactive mass, their biological field maintaining a sphere of normalized space around the ship. Medical Bay Update, Arya announced. Detecting elevated stress patterns in Ventaxian biological processes, enhancement enzyme production becoming unstable. Through his neural interface, Gary observed Quinn's vital signs fluctuating as she maintained the protective field. Her siblings' synchronized support wavered, their combined abilities straining against the intense radiation pressure. The ship's hull groaned as a new series of impacts rattled the frame. Behind them, KR's interceptors attempted to follow their path through the asteroid. Gary watched through external sensors as the pursuing vessel's radiation shields failed. Emergency beacons activated as their crews abandoned ship, escape pods scattering into the thorium field. Incoming transmission from Star Wanderer, Arya reported. Captain Simmons transmitting tactical data. The encrypted feed revealed Fleet Admiral Xanther's specialized capture ships moving into position around the asteroid. Their advanced radiation shielding and prototype disabling weapons indicated preparation for a coordinated intercept. A series of controlled detonations lit up the sensor display. The Star Wanderer's mining equipment targeted nearby thorium deposits, creating radiation surges that forced Xanther's vessels to adjust their formation. Simmons's civilian mining operation provided legitimate cover for actions that complicated the Centaurian pursuit. Warning: Medical Bay power fluctuations critical, Arya announced. Ventaxian protective field showing signs of instability. Gary diverted additional power to the medical systems, watching through internal sensors as the siblings' enhanced healing processes competed with their radiation dampening effect. The ship's remaining functional systems integrated with their biological field, optimizing power distribution to maintain both protection and life support. The vessel's damaged starboard thrusters created asymmetrical thrust vectors as Gary guided them through another crystalline chamber. Emergency repair drones scattered as deck plates buckled under the increasing structural strain. His neural interface highlighted failing support beams across multiple sections. Centaurian Command Channel Intercept, Arya reported. Fleet Admiral Xanther assuming direct tactical control from Commander Vexnar. The encrypted communications revealed growing tension in the Centaurian hierarchy. Political officer Nenter demanded preservation of the Ventaxian subjects, while Xanther prioritized operational security. Their conflicting orders created confusion in the military response. Fresh alarms sounded as the tunnel walls constricted around them. The Ventaxian siblings' protective field fluctuated, allowing radiation to penetrate the ship's remaining shields. Gary adjusted their course through the narrowing passage, redistributing power to critical systems as more secondary functions failed. Star Wanderer broadcasting on commercial frequencies, Arya announced. Communications Officer Palmer documenting Centaurian fleet movements. The civilian sensor network maintained coverage of the military operation, forcing Xanther's forces to operate within treaty restrictions. Palmer's intercepted transmissions exposed the Admiral's true orders regarding witness elimination, adding another layer of complexity to the tactical situation. Gary guided their vessel through an intersection of thorium veins, following the path of least resistance identified by his neural calculations. The ship's structural integrity dropped as they penetrated deeper into the asteroid's core. Emergency force fields contained multiple hull breaches while repair drones worked at maximum capacity. Medical alert, Arya reported. Ventaxian biological enhancement reaching critical instability. Protective field integrity declining. The siblings' combined bioluminescence dimmed as their enhanced capabilities reached their limits. Gary watched their vital signs fluctuate while maintaining their course through the radiation-saturated rock. His neural interface integrated ship systems with the weakening biological field, preserving their shrinking sphere of protection. The vessel shuddered as another section of hull plating separated from the frame. Atmosphere vented through expanding breaches as emergency containment struggled to compensate. Through external sensors, Gary tracked Xanter's capture ships maintaining their spherical formation around the asteroid's surface, waiting to intercept any potential escape vector. Multiple system failures in engineering, Arya announced. Detecting critical power fluctuations across all remaining functional circuits. The asymmetrical thrust from their damaged engines created increasing strain as Gary executed precise maneuvers through the crystalline passages. His neural interface highlighted the optimal route through the asteroid's core while managing their failing systems. The ship's structural frame protested as they pushed deeper into the thorium field, racing against the Ventaxian siblings' declining protective capabilities. The ship's frame groaned as another hull plate tore free. Gary's neural interface highlighted multiple red zones spreading across the structural diagram as more sections lost pressure. Arya diverted emergency power to maintain containment around the bridge, medical bay, and critical engine components. Detecting pure thorium crystal formation ahead, Arya announced. Radiation levels exceeding previous measurements. Through the forward sensors, Gary observed the massive crystalline structure embedded in the asteroid's core. The Ventaxian siblings' bioluminescence flickered as their protective field encountered the concentrated radiation source. Quinn's vital signs spiked erratically on his neural display. Medical alert, enzyme production patterns shifting, Arya reported, detecting cellular stress in all three subjects. The ship's remaining functional systems struggled to compensate as their sphere of protection wavered. Gary adjusted power distribution through his neural interface, balancing the failing life support against their dwindling engine output. The asymmetrical thrust from their damaged starboard section sent vibrations through the weakened frame. External sensors detected movement above the asteroid's surface. Fleet Admiral Xanter's vessels shifted into a precise geometric pattern, their positions calculated to intercept any potential escape vector. The prototype vessel, Shadow Strike, took point near a structural weakness in the asteroid's outer shell. Incoming transmission from Desert Wind, Arya announced. Captain Roberts providing supplementary sensor data. The civilian freighter's presence expanded their sensor coverage while maintaining legitimate commercial activities. Roberts's tactical experience from his military service showed in his careful positioning, providing additional observation angles without directly interfering with Centaurian operations. Gary's neural implant registered increasing instability in the surrounding thorium crystal structure. The combined effects of radiation exposure and continuous vibration threatened to trigger a cascade collapse. His interface projected multiple failure points spreading through the crystalline matrix. Security Chief KR's transmitting tactical data to Centaurian Command, Arya reported. Analysis indicates pattern recognition in Ventaxian biological field generation. The ship's sensors detected Xanter's vessels adjusting their formation in response to KR's intelligence. Their new positions aligned with predicted weaknesses in the siblings' protective field, creating a coordinated containment strategy. Through the neural interface, Gary observed encrypted communication bursts between political officer Nenter and Centaurian High Command. The resulting command confusion created gaps in the pursuit vessel's coordination as Xanther's military priorities clashed with preservation directives. Star Wanderer detecting new vessel signatures, Arya announced. Biological containment ships entering sector. Sarah Palmer's decoded transmissions revealed detailed specifications of the Centaurian research vessels. Their specialized containment systems matched illegal biological weapons protocols, confirming the broader implications of their pursuit. The thorium crystals surrounding their ship pulsed with increasing intensity. Gary's neural readings showed critical instability spreading through the asteroid's core structure. The Ventaxian siblings' weakening protective field struggled against the mounting radiation pressure as their enhanced capabilities approached their limits. Their vessel pushed through another constricting passage as emergency force fields contained additional hull breaches. Gary's neural interface integrated with the remaining functional systems, calculating power requirements to maintain their shrinking sphere of protection. The ship's structural frame protested as they approached the critical junction ahead. Warning: detecting crystalline structure collapse imminent, Arya reported. Multiple radiation containment vectors failing. Through external sensors, Gary tracked Xanther's forces maintaining their precise mathematical formation. The Shadow Strike's advanced targeting systems locked onto their position, its prototype weapons primed to exploit any weakness in their failing defenses. Behind them, the thorium crystal matrix continued destabilizing, threatening to flood their escape route with lethal radiation. The medical bay's power demands fluctuated as the siblings' bioluminescence dimmed. Their synchronized biological field wavered against the intense radiation, while their enhanced healing processes struggled to compensate for cellular damage. Gary's neural interface highlighted multiple critical choices ahead as their remaining functional systems reached their operational limits. A violent shudder rippled through the ship's frame as another hull section tore free. Gary's neural interface highlighted the spreading structural damage in pulsing red patterns across his field of view. Only the reinforced core sections housing the bridge, medical bay, and essential engine components remained intact. Through the external sensors, he tracked the separation of 3 more hull plates, the metal fragments spinning away into the thorium-saturated void. The asymmetrical thrust from the damaged starboard engines sent dangerous oscillations through the remaining structure. In the medical bay, Quinn's bioluminescence flared as her enhanced biology interacted with a massive thorium crystal formation. The radiation readings spiked beyond previous measurements, but Arya's sensors detected an unexpected effect, expanding zones of normalized space trailing behind their vessel. Analysis: Ventaxian biological field generating persistent stable corridors, Arya reported. Radiation levels within safe parameters after field passage. Gary diverted additional power to the medical systems as the siblings' vital signs fluctuated. Their combined protective field wavered but held, creating more stable zones as they pushed deeper into the crystal matrix. The ship's remaining functional systems integrated with the biological effect, optimizing the distribution of their dwindling resources. Above the asteroid's surface, Xanther's vessels shifted formation. The Shadow Strike took position near a structural weakness, its advanced targeting systems locked onto their projected exit vector. Through encrypted channels, Gary detected increasing command conflicts as Science Director Melrin's research vessel entered the sector. Desert Wind broadcasting tactical update, Arya announced. Multiple civilian vessels initiating synchronized mining operations. On the sensor display, Gary watched Captain Roberts coordinate with the Star Wanderer and Northern Star. Their commercial mining equipment activated in precise patterns, creating radiation disturbances that obscured potential escape routes. Sarah Martinez's bulk freighter joined the spreading network of civilian vessels, documenting the military operation. The asteroid's core structure groaned as crystalline fractures propagated through the surrounding passages. Gary's neural calculations projected multiple collapse points spreading outward from their position. The damaged starboard thrusters created dangerous oscillations as he navigated through the disintegrating tunnels. KR's transmitting analysis to Centaurian Command, Arya reported. Detection algorithms identifying pattern variations in Ventaxian biological response. The security chief's data revealed the siblings' enhanced capabilities, demonstrating increased effectiveness against specific thorium frequencies. Gary's neural interface processed the tactical implications while managing their failing systems. The ship's frame protested as they pushed through another constricting passage. New alarms sounded as the structural collapse accelerated. Gary executed emergency maneuvers through the fragmenting crystal matrix, his neural implant calculating safe trajectories between expanding radiation pockets. The Ventaxian siblings maintained their protective field despite the mounting strain, leaving behind a network of stabilized corridors. Multiple Centaurian command channels active, Arya announced. Detecting conflicting tactical priorities. The encrypted communications revealed escalating tension between political officer Nenther's preservation directives, science director Melrin's research priorities, and Admiral Xanther's military objectives. Their specialized vessels adjusted positions independently, creating gaps in the containment formation. Gary guided their vessel through the maze of thorium crystals as more sections of the asteroid's core destabilized. His neural interface integrated ship systems with the siblings' weakening biological field, preserving their shrinking sphere of protection while tracking the expanding network of stable zones their passage created. The civilian vessels continued their coordinated mining operations, generating complex patterns of radiation interference that masked potential escape vectors. Through the sensor feed, Gary observed Captain Martinez positioning the Northern Star to maintain optimal documentation coverage of the Centaurian fleet movements. Fresh structural alerts flashed across his neural display as they approached the asteroid's outer shell. The ship's remaining hull groaned under the increasing strain, while emergency force fields contained the latest breaches. Ahead, multiple escape routes presented themselves through the labyrinth of stabilized corridors, each offering different tactical advantages and hazards. The Shadow Strike's targeting systems adjusted to track their approach, its prototype weapons primed to disable their engines. Behind them, the cascade of crystalline collapse threatened to flood their escape route with lethal radiation. Gary's neural interface processed the tactical data as he prepared to select their final trajectory through the disintegrating structure. Gary's neural interface tracked the spreading crystalline collapse, calculating trajectories through the fragmenting passages. A new sensor alert flashed his systems detected a massive thorium formation directly ahead, its structure different from the surrounding crystal matrix. The Ventaxian siblings' bioluminescence pulsed in response, their protective field interacting with the unique crystal formation. Energy patterns changing, Arya reported, detecting coherent radiation wave formation. The siblings' combined biological field synchronized with the thorium crystal's lattice structure. Their protective sphere compressed as another hull section tore free, but the interaction generated an unexpected effect. A stable corridor formed in the asteroid's outer shell, extending beyond the Centaurian containment grid. New vessel detected, Arya announced. Stellar Dawn broadcasting civilian registration. The freighter's arrival disrupted the Centaurian formation. Gary's neural interface identified the ship's commander, Captain Viktor Petrov. Their shared combat experience from the border wars immediately evident in Petrov's approach vector. The Stellar Dawn's commercial transmission equipment activated, flooding Centaurian sensors with complex interference patterns. The Shadow Strike's targeting systems shifted erratically, its tracking algorithms struggling to isolate their position among multiplying signal ghosts. Warning: starboard structural integrity failing, Arya reported. Emergency compression protocols initiated. The ship's remaining functional sections compressed inward as the outer hull gave way. Emergency force fields contained the breach while Arya diverted all power to essential systems. In the medical bay, Quinn's vital signs stabilized as the protective field adapted to their reduced volume. Science Director Melrin's research vessel launched a swarm of probe drones. The device's scanning beams swept through the stable corridors left by the Ventaxian field effect. Gary's neural implant intercepted their analysis data, confirming the probes had detected signatures matching classified weapons research. Melrin's vessel breaking formation, Arya reported. Multiple civilian ships entering sector. The freighters Morning Star, Horizon Runner, and Thunder Child joined Captain Roberts's expanding network. Their sensor arrays activated in precise patterns, documenting every aspect of the Centaurian pursuit operation. Former military crews coordinated their movements with practiced efficiency. Gary guided their compressed vessel toward the radiation-free corridor. The Ventaxian siblings maintained their protective field despite obvious strain, their synchronized bioluminescence creating a path through the lethal radiation. Behind them, the thorium crystal matrix continued its cascade collapse. Detecting command channel conflicts, Arya announced. Science Director Melrin requesting priority access to target zone. The research vessel's movement forced Admiral Xanther's ships to adjust their containment pattern. Political officer Nenther's encrypted transmissions revealed increasing tension between competing operational priorities. The Shadow Strike maintained its intercept position, but divided its targeting focus between multiple potential emergence points. Their vessels remaining hull groaned as Gary pushed through the constricting passage. The asymmetrical thrust from their damaged engines sent vibrations through the reinforced core sections. Arya's power management protocols kept critical systems functioning while shutting down all non-essential operations. Captain Petrov's electronic warfare suite generated fresh waves of sensor confusion. The Stellar Dawn's specialized equipment masked their approach vector among false target signatures. Through their old tactical channel, Gary received updated trajectory data accounting for the Centaurian pursuit formation's weak points. The massive thorium crystal pulsed with increasing intensity as they approached. The Ventaxian siblings' biological field resonated with its unique structure, expanding the radiation-free corridor. Their combined effect created a temporary breach in the asteroid's outer shell, bypassing the Centaurian containment grid. Gary's neural interface integrated the sensor data from Captain Martinez's civilian network. The expanding formation of independent ships maintained comprehensive documentation coverage while creating additional layers of interference. The Thunder Child's mining equipment activated, its radiation signature masking their final approach to the temporary breach. The Thunder Child's mining signatures provided the final burst of cover they needed. Gary engaged full thrust through the temporary breach, their vessel's compressed core configuration slicing through the gap in the asteroid's shell. Emergency force fields crackled as the last fragments of outer hull peeled away, leaving only the reinforced sections intact. Hull integrity at 17%, Arya reported. Asymmetrical thrust patterns detected. The failing starboard system sent them into a controlled spiral, the erratic motion disrupting targeting locks from pursuing vessels. In the medical bay, Quinn and her siblings' bioluminescence pulsed in synchronized waves. Their protective field contracted to match the ship's reduced profile, while maintaining a stable energy barrier against the surrounding radiation. The Centaurian fleet split apart as they emerged. Science Director Melrin's research vessel broke from the main formation, its sensor arrays tracking the radiation-free corridor left in their wake. Multiple probe drones swarmed around the breach point, gathering data on the Ventaxian biological phenomenon. Shadow Strike launching containment devices, Arya announced. Detecting advanced nanomaterial composition. Through his neural interface, Gary tracked the spreading capture nets. The silvery mesh expanded outward, designed to entangle while preserving valuable cargo. He adjusted their spiral trajectory, using the asymmetrical thrust to their advantage as they wove between the lethal webbing. A new contact appeared on his tactical display, the heavy transport Iron Phoenix. Its massive hull bristled with industrial mining equipment, positioning itself near thorium-rich asteroids throughout the sector. Captain Ramirez's vessel broadcasted standard commercial protocols, while its presence forced the Centaurian pursuit groups to adjust their firing solutions. Quinn's vital signs spiked on the medical readouts. Her enhanced biology began processing the ambient thorium radiation, converting it into usable energy that flowed through their ship's power grid. The siblings' protective field strengthened, compensating for multiple system failures. Power levels stabilizing, Arya reported, detecting permanent biological adaptation to thorium exposure. Security Chief KR's interceptor squadron deployed in a new formation. Specialized devices activated around their vessel, creating localized vacuum zones that attempted to drain energy from the Ventaxian protective field. The sudden power drain forced Gary to divert additional resources to medical systems. Warning: critical power allocation required, Arya announced. Medical Bay priority protocols engaged. The Stellar Dawn's electronic warfare suite activated in full. Captain Petrov's specialized equipment flooded Centaurian sensors with false signatures, multiplying the apparent number of civilian vessels in the sector. Admiral Xanther's pursuit groups divided further, forced to verify each contact to avoid diplomatic incidents. Gary guided them through the scattered formation while managing cascading system failures. The siblings' protective field wavered but held, their enhanced capabilities providing crucial support despite the mounting strain. Behind them, the Iron Phoenix's presence near unstable thorium deposits created an expanding zone of tactical uncertainty that the Centaurian vessels could not ignore. Multiple civilian vessels entering sensor range, Arya reported, detecting coordinated documentation protocols. The independent ships maintained their expanding coverage pattern, each vessel's sensors focused on different aspects of the military operation. Through encrypted channels, Gary received tactical updates from the civilian network, allowing him to exploit gaps in the pursuit formation as they appeared. His neural interface highlighted new sensor contacts as additional interceptors moved to cut off their escape vector. The Shadow Strike adjusted its position, preparing to launch another spread of capture nets, while KR's energy siphons continued their drain attempt. Gary diverted power from non-essential systems as he calculated their next series of maneuvers through the tightening blockade. Gary executed a rapid series of course corrections through the tightening formation as his neural interface registered 3 new contacts materializing at the sector's edge. The massive silhouettes of Commodore Rinhax's battle cruisers emerged from hyperspace, their specialized capture arrays extending like metallic webs. Alert! Third Fleet vessels detected, Arya announced. Analyzing tractor beam configurations. The ship's remaining hull sections groaned as Gary pushed the failing engines to their limits. In the medical bay, Quinn's vital signs displayed an unexpected pattern. Her enhanced biology began actively processing the ambient thorium radiation. The energy conversion manifested as a visible corona of stabilized space surrounding their vessel's compressed profile. Power fluctuation detected, Arya reported. Ventaxian biological effect generating sustainable energy pattern. The excess power flowed through their damaged systems, creating a regenerative cycle that reduced strain on the failing reactor core. Gary's neural interface registered the siblings' protective field strengthening as it adapted to sustained operation. The stabilized energy corona deflected incoming scan beams from Commodore Rinhax's automated intercept drones. A series of controlled detonations lit up the tactical display as Captain Ramirez activated the Iron Phoenix's mining charges. Expanding clouds of radioactive debris scattered the tractor beam targeting locks while creating additional sensor shadows. Through encrypted channels, Gary detected the precise timing coordination between Ramirez and Captain Simmons's vessel network. Science Director Melrin's research vessel altered course, breaking away from the main Centaurian formation. Her probe drones swarmed outward in complex patterns, their scanning beams focused on the unique energy signature generated by the Ventaxian siblings. Warning: probe drones analyzing biological effect, Arya announced, detecting classified research protocols. Admiral Xanther's encrypted orders revealed increasing frustration as he diverted the Shadow Strike to contain Melrin's unauthorized research operation. The prototype vessel's weapon systems powered down as it adjusted course to intercept the wayward science director. Security Chief Karsk's tactical experience showed in his interceptor's positioning. The vessels established a precise containment pattern, using the debris fields as natural barriers while leaving Gary a single viable escape route directly toward the waiting battle cruiser's capture zones. Multiple targeting systems active, Arya reported, detecting automated drone deployment. Captain Petrov's electronic warfare suite struggled against the advanced pattern recognition systems carried by Rinhax's intercept drones. The automated hunters filtered through the civilian vessels false signatures with increasing accuracy, gradually negating the tactical advantage provided by the civilian network's presence. The Ventaxian siblings' protective field pulsed with newfound strength as their energy conversion reached peak efficiency. Arya redirected the excess power to critical systems, maintaining their compressed hull configuration while emergency force fields contained the latest structural breaches. Gary's neural interface processed the updated tactical data as Karsk's interceptors continued their coordinated herding maneuvers. Power stability at 60%, Arya announced. Biological energy conversion compensating for core system failures. Through the sensor feed, Gary tracked the growing division in the Centaurian command structure. Science Director Melrin's probe drones gathered crucial data on the Ventaxian phenomenon, while the Shadow Strike moved to restrict her vessel's movements. Admiral Xanther's pursuit groups divided further as they attempted to maintain their containment formation while managing multiple operational priorities. The Iron Phoenix triggered another sequence of precise detonations, creating a temporary gap in Karsk's herding pattern. Gary adjusted their trajectory through the radioactive debris field as Commodore Rinhax's battle cruisers established their primary capture positions. The massive vessel's tractor beam arrays powered up, ready to snare their damaged ship the moment it cleared the interference zone. Alert! Multiple targeting solutions detected, Arya reported. Tractor beam arrays at full power. Arya's alert merged with Gary's neural feed as the tractor beam arrays powered to full strength. Energy tendrils lashed out from Rinhax's battle cruisers, their capture fields converging on their position. Gary executed a precise spiral through the radioactive debris, using their asymmetrical thrust pattern to disrupt the targeting solutions. Incoming contact, Arya announced. Heavy freighter Atlas Prime emerging from hyperspace. The massive cargo vessel materialized near Captain Martinez's network, its hull jam-packed with industrial equipment. Gary's neural interface pinged with recognition. Captain David Walsh's authentication codes triggered memories from their shared Border Wars service record. Deploying shield generator array, Walsh transmitted through their encrypted channel. Maintain your current vector. Industrial shield generators launched from the Atlas Prime's cargo bays, their activation sequences creating overlapping fields of sensor interference. The devices spread outward in a calculated pattern, their energy signatures interacting with the thorium-rich debris clouds. In the medical bay, Quinn's vital signs displayed another evolutionary spike. The siblings' biological field expanded beyond normal parameters, generating expanding zones of radiation nullification. The effect rippled outward, disrupting the frequencies of the approaching tractor beams. Biological adaptation detected, ARIA reported. Field effect neutralizing capture systems. Science Director Melrin's research vessel launched a final wave of probe drones, their advanced sensors documenting the unprecedented Ventaxian phenomenon. Admiral Xanther's response echoed through the command channels. Shadow Strike, disable that launch bay immediately, Xanther ordered. Security breach in progress. The prototype vessel broke formation, its weapon systems targeting Melrin's research ship. The resulting chaos fractured the Centaurian containment pattern, creating temporary gaps in their coverage. Karsk's interceptors adjusted tactics, deploying magnetic resonance disruptors that targeted their remaining defensive systems. Localized field disruptions threatened to collapse their emergency force fields. Gary diverted power from his neural implant, stabilizing the failing protective measures. Warning, critical field integrity, ARIA announced. Detecting system instability. The Iron Phoenix coordinated with Walsh's Atlas Prime, timing their shield generator activations with precise detonations in the thorium debris field. Energy distortions cascaded through local space, creating false signatures that overwhelmed Centaurian targeting systems. Maintaining operational coverage, Captain Ramirez transmitted. Mining protocols active. Gary guided them through the tactical screen, exploiting gaps in sensor coverage while managing their failing systems. The siblings' protective field pulsed with increasing strength, its radiation conversion providing crucial power to their compressed core configuration. Range to pursuit fleet expanding, ARIA reported, detecting reduced targeting efficiency. The civilian vessel network maintained comprehensive documentation of the military operation, while Walsh's industrial shield generators created additional layers of interference. Their damaged ship pressed onward through the chaos, riding the edge between survival and system failure as they approached the limits of effective Centaurian sensor range. In the medical bay, Quinn's enhanced biology continued evolving, her vital signs displaying previously unrecorded patterns. The protective field surrounding their vessel fluctuated with new properties as the siblings' capabilities adapted to sustained operation. Alert! Unknown field properties detected, ARIA announced. Analyzing mutation patterns. The Shadow Strike's weapons impacted Melrin's research vessel, disabling its launch systems. Her probe drones scattered in programmed escape patterns, their collected data broadcasts flooding civilian communication channels. Admiral Xanther's pursuit groups divided further, struggling to contain multiple security breaches while maintaining their pursuit formation. Gary's neural interface processed the tactical updates as they threaded through the overlapping shield generator effects. The Atlas Prime's industrial equipment continued deploying in precise sequences, each activation timed to disrupt Centaurian targeting solutions while maintaining plausible civilian mining operations. Field integrity stabilizing, ARIA reported. Detecting reduced system strain. The ship's remaining structure creaked under the stress of sustained high-energy maneuvers. Emergency force fields flickered but held as the siblings' protective field compensated for their structural weakness. Through their encrypted channels, Gary received updated tactical data from Walsh's military-grade sensor suite, revealing new gaps in the pursuit formation. Rintax's battle cruisers adjusted position, their tractor beam arrays reconfiguring to compensate for the interference patterns. The massive vessel's targeting systems filtered through the false signatures, gradually adapting to the tactical screen generated by the civilian ships. Multiple targeting solutions updating, Arya announced. Detecting modified capture protocols. Modified capture systems adapting to interference, Arya announced, tracking the shifting tactical display. Detecting new contact at sector boundary. The sleek silhouette of the Aegis blade materialized at the edge of the conflict zone, its stealth systems powering down in a controlled sequence. Gary's neural interface pinged with recognition as Colonel Blackwood's encrypted authentication codes filtered through the civilian network's communications. Maintain your current vector, Blackwood transmitted through their secured channel. Adjusting support position. The military transport's presence forced an immediate shift in the battle cruiser's firing patterns. Rintax's vessels altered their tractor beam configurations, creating gaps in their coverage to avoid potential weapons lock on the Terran military vessel. Quinn's vitals spiked again as her enhanced biology reached a new adaptation threshold. The protective field surrounding their ship pulsed with focused energy, actively neutralizing specific frequencies of incoming Centaurian weapons fire. Arya's medical sensors documented the precise correlation between the field effect and the energy signatures stored in Gary's neural implant. Biological field targeting experimental weapons frequencies, Arya reported, collecting verification data. Security Chief KR's interceptors launched a spread of quantum resonance mines, the specialized devices generating expanding zones of disruption that threatened their emergency force fields. Gary diverted additional power from his neural systems, struggling to maintain field integrity as the interference patterns intensified. Through their sensor feed, Gary tracked the chaos unfolding around Melrin's research vessel. The Shadow Strike's precision strikes disabled her primary sensor arrays, triggering a cascade of system failures. Several probe drones spun out of control, their hulls impacting multiple pursuit vessels. Iron Phoenix coordinating with Aegis Blade, Arya announced. Detecting enhanced electronic warfare patterns. The military transport's advanced systems amplified the radioactive interference, creating a corridor of sensor chaos that extended beyond effective tracking range. Captain Ramirez timed his mining charges perfectly, each detonation synchronized with the Aegis Blade's electronic warfare pulses. Gary's neural interface registered critical warnings as their starboard systems continued failing. The asymmetrical thrust created an erratic flight path through the debris field, their compressed hull profile barely maintaining structural integrity. The siblings' protective field fluctuated with increasing strain, approaching maximum sustainable output. Alert! Fleet-wide power surge detected, Arya reported. Analyzing gravitational distortion. Admiral Xanther's desperate containment measure manifested as a massive energy barrier, generated by the combined tractor beam arrays of his pursuit fleet. The focused gravitational distortion threatened to trap them in a localized spacetime anomaly. Captain Walsh's industrial shield generators created overlapping zones of interference, their activation sequences precisely timed to disrupt the forming barrier. The Atlas Prime maintained its civilian mining operations profile while providing crucial tactical support. Warning: multiple system failures imminent, Arya announced. Core configuration destabilizing. The Ventaxian siblings' biological field pulsed with renewed intensity, converting ambient radiation into sustainable power. Emergency force fields flickered, but held as they approached the edge of Centaurian space. Gary's neural interface processed the tactical data from Blackwood's military-grade sensors, revealing their optimal escape vector through the chaos. The expanding observer network documented every aspect of the pursuit operation, civilian vessels maintaining comprehensive sensor coverage of the Centaurian military actions. Gary guided their failing ship through the corridor of electronic warfare interference, riding the edge between tactical advantage and total system collapse. Field integrity critical, Arya reported. Detecting quantum resonance buildup. KR's specialized mines generated increasing levels of disruption, their effects amplified by the gravitational distortion field. Gary executed precise course corrections through the sensor chaos, exploiting gaps in the Centaurian containment pattern while managing their rapidly failing systems. The Aegis Blade's electronic warfare suite created false sensor echoes throughout the debris field, masking their actual position as they approached the final security perimeter. Colonel Blackwood maintained official deniability while positioning his vessel to provide maximum tactical coverage. Power fluctuation exceeding sustainable limits, Arya announced. Biological field reaching threshold. Core stabilization initiated, Arya reported as the siblings' biological field surged through the ship's power distribution network. The radiation-charged energy spread through failing systems, reinforcing emergency force fields and restoring partial functionality to critical components. Gary's neural interface registered the unprecedented integration of biological and mechanical systems. The protective field emanating from Quinn's enhanced biology penetrated deeper into the vessel's infrastructure, creating a web of stabilizing energy that fought against their cascading system failures. Incoming contact, Arya announced. Terran Defense Force destroyer Vigilant Thunder entering operational range. The massive warship emerged from hyperspace, its pristine hull bearing the distinctive markings of Admiral James Morrison's command. The destroyer's presence triggered an immediate shift in the tactical situation, as Xanther's pursuit fleet adjusted their attack vectors to avoid direct confrontation with the Terran vessel. Stand down aggressive pursuit operations, Morrison's transmission cut through the encrypted channels. This sector falls under joint jurisdiction protocols. Through the tactical display, Gary tracked KR's final squadron breaking formation. The interceptors accelerated on suicide vectors, their experimental phase disruptors charging with distinctive energy signatures. His neural interface calculated their approach trajectories as the Aegis Blade moved to intercept. Hostile craft inbound, Colonel Blackwood transmitted, engaging defensive measures. The military transport stealth systems deactivated fully, revealing advanced weapon emplacements that targeted KR's attacking ships. The Aegis Blade's intervention exposed classified Terran capabilities as it moved to protect Gary's vessel from the phase disruptor assault. A new contact signature appeared at the edge of sensor range. The bulk freighter Stormbreaker decelerated from hyperspace, its cargo bays opening to deploy industrial sensor buoys. Captain Hayes' equipment spread through local space in a precise pattern, documenting every aspect of the confrontation. Multiple data streams detected, Arya reported as the sensor network expanded. Civilian frequencies active. Melrin's damaged research vessel broke away from the Centaurian formation, broadcasting fragmentary data about Quinn's biological adaptation. The Shadow Strike's weapons powered up, targeting the science director's transmission arrays. The prototype vessel's aggressive response created visible tension in the Centaurian command structure. Gary's neural implant registered a critical alert as Rent Hax's battle cruisers initiated their quantum containment protocols. Space itself began to distort as the massive vessels generated an altered barrier of spacetime around their position. The Vigilant Thunder's main weapon arrays activated in response, their power signatures rising to combat readiness. Warning: spatial distortion detected, Arya announced. Local physics parameters destabilizing. The siblings' protective field pulsed with increased intensity, converting the quantum disruption into usable energy. Emergency systems stabilized as their biological barrier adapted to the changing conditions. Gary guided them through the rapidly deteriorating space toward the jurisdiction boundary, managing their partially restored systems while avoiding the worst spatial distortions. Documenting treaty violations, Hayes transmitted through the civilian network. Maintaining sensor coverage. The Storm Breaker's industrial buoys captured every detail of the Centaurian military actions. Their sensor data filtered through commercial channels, creating an irrefutable record while preserving plausible civilian mining operations. Gary's neural interface archived the incoming evidence alongside the critical data already stored in his implant. Quinn's vital signs displayed another evolutionary surge as their biological field interfaced more deeply with the ship's systems. The protective barrier extended through power conduits and structural supports, its energy signature stabilizing their compressed core configuration. Arya's medical sensors documented the unprecedented symbiosis between organic and mechanical systems. Field integrity improving, Arya reported, detecting restored functionality in primary systems. The Vigilant Thunder maintained its blocking position as Gary's vessel approached the edge of Centaurian space. Admiral Morrison's presence created a formal diplomatic barrier that restricted Xanter's pursuit options. The destroyer's weapons remained charged, a clear warning against further escalation of the quantum containment field. Through their encrypted channels, Gary coordinated with the civilian vessel network while managing their stabilized systems. The siblings' protective field continued adapting to the spatial distortions, converting ambient energy into sustainable power as they pressed toward their final escape vector. Alert! Phase disruptor signatures detected, Arya announced as KR's interceptors entered terminal attack range. Pattern. Gary activated emergency thrust vectors as their ship crossed into the clear space beyond Centaurian jurisdiction. The biological field surrounding their vessel reached peak resonance, its azure corona merging seamlessly with their remaining emergency force fields. Core stability achieved, Arya reported. Biological field interface optimizing ship systems. Quinn's enhanced capabilities integrated fully with their compressed power configuration. Energy cascaded through restored conduits, the siblings' protective field extending tendrils of biomechanical support through their vessel's infrastructure. Gary's neural interface documented the unprecedented fusion of organic and technological systems. The Vigilant Thunder matched their trajectory precisely, its massive hull eclipsing multiple Centaurian pursuit vessels. Admiral Morrison's destroyer maintained active targeting locks on Rinhax's battle cruisers while escorting Gary's ship to safety. Pursuit fleet holding position at boundary, Arya announced. Detecting new contact civilian transport, Nova Dawn entering range. Captain Elizabeth Simmons' transport decelerated from hyperspace, its diplomatic transponder broadcasting Galactic Council credentials. The Nova Dawn's arrival triggered immediate sensor activity across Hayes' expanding observation network, as Council observers documented the military confrontation. Gary's neural interface registered intense energy fluctuations as their biological field interacted with the quantum containment barrier. Zones of normal space erupted through Xanter's altered spacetime field, creating viable escape corridors through the Centaurian blockade. Analyzing field interaction effects, Arya reported. Recording quantum destabilization patterns. KR's remaining interceptors accelerated toward the Atlas Prime, targeting Walsh's industrial shield array. Colonel Blackwood's response was immediate. The Aegis blades, mining lasers activated with military precision, neutralizing the attacking vessels with precise shots that matched civilian hardware signatures. Receiving encrypted transmission, Arya announced. Science Director Melrin broadcasting technical data. The research vessel's transmission arrays activated fully, flooding civilian frequencies, with detailed analysis of the Ventaxian biological phenomenon. Gary's neural implant archived the incoming data as the Shadow Strike moved to engage, its weapons charging with lethal intent. The Aegis blade interposed itself between the vessels, its stealth systems fully exposed. "Maintain your distance," Blackwood transmitted. "This vessel is under Terran protection." Through their sensor feed, Gary tracked the expanding safety corridor forming around their position. The Iron Phoenix and Atlas Prime coordinated their shield generator deployments, creating overlapping fields of protection that extended beyond Centaurian weapons range. "Multiple shield harmonics detected," Arya reported. "Observer network coverage at maximum capacity." The Vigilant Thunder's escort position allowed Gary to divert additional power to their drive systems. Their stabilized configuration maintained integrity as they accelerated away from Centaurian space, the siblings' biological support field adapting to compensate for the increased stress. "Warning: spatial distortions intensifying," Arya announced as Xanther's containment field pressed against their escape vector. The Ventaxian field pulsed in response, converting the quantum interference into usable energy while neutralizing localized spacetime anomalies. Gary's neural interface processed the incoming sensor data from Hayes' buoy network, documenting every aspect of the Centaurian military response. Melrin's transmitted analysis provided crucial validation of the evidence secured in his implant, confirming the full scope of their engineered adaptations. Receiving targeting data, Arya reported as Morrison's destroyer established electronic warfare coverage around their position. The Vigilant Thunder's advanced systems created a protective umbrella of sensor chaos, masking their exact vector while maintaining clear documentation of Centaurian violations. The biological field surrounding their ship stabilized at peak efficiency, its energy matrix fully integrated with their restored systems. Gary guided them through the safety corridor as the observer network expanded, their enhanced capabilities providing sustainable power for their final escape vector. As they cleared the safety corridor, their vessel's systems underwent an unprecedented transformation. The biological field emanating from the siblings penetrated deeper into the ship's infrastructure, healing damaged sections with living material that merged seamlessly with the original hull. Gary's neural interface registered the formation of new organic hybrid components spreading through previously compromised areas. "Detecting biomechanical regeneration," Arya announced. Hull integrity increasing beyond baseline specifications. The azure corona surrounding their ship stabilized into a permanent configuration, its energy signature harmonizing with their restored systems. Through the bridge viewport, Gary observed the distinctive bioluminescent patterns flowing across their newly transformed hull sections. "I'm Lyra," the female sibling spoke softly, breaking months of silence. "My brother is Vex." Gary nodded, understanding the significance of their self-identification. "Welcome aboard, Lyra and Vex." The Vigilant Thunder maintained escort position as they approached Phoenix Station, its massive form providing continued protection. The Terran outpost's specialized medical facilities came into view, their sensor arrays already analyzing the unique biomechanical signature of Gary's transformed vessel. "Medical Bay prepared for enhanced biological analysis," Arya reported as Lyra and Vex's vital signs displayed on the main console. Their readings showed complete stabilization of their modified systems, their bodies fully adapted to their enhanced capabilities. The Nova Dawn's observation team transmitted secure authentication codes, establishing a direct link to Gary's neural implant. The stored evidence transferred alongside Melrin's transmitted research data, creating a comprehensive record of Centaurian violations. "Data package verification complete," Captain Simmons confirmed through their encrypted channel. Council representatives are prepared to receive full documentation. Phoenix Station's docking systems guided them to a specialized berth equipped with biological containment fields. As they settled into position, new organic structures grew throughout their vessel's interior, forming customized living quarters that resonated with Lyra and Vex's unique biology. Ship configuration adapting to crew requirements, Arya noted as the siblings' biological field integrated with her core systems. The connection transformed the ship's operational parameters, creating a hybrid consciousness that merged organic insight with artificial precision. Admiral Morrison's holographic form materialized on the bridge. The evidence package has already triggered Council action. Centaurian research facilities are being shut down across 3 sectors. Gary received encrypted authorization codes that designated his vessel for special operations status. Your unique capabilities will be invaluable for locating similar programs, Morrison continued. Colonel Blackwood's team will provide necessary support. The civilian vessel commanders appeared on adjacent displays. Walsh, Ramirez, Hayes, and others who had risked their ships to document the escape. Your sensor recordings have exposed decades of violations, Morrison informed them. Terran Command extends its highest commendation for your service. Lyra moved to the navigation console, her enhanced biology interfacing directly with the hybrid controls. Vex took position at weapons, their shared field strengthening the ship's defensive capabilities. The former test subjects had found their roles, transformed from victims into active crew members. New mission parameters received, Arya announced as Colonel Blackwood transmitted operational data. Multiple research facilities identified for investigation. Gary initiated pre-launch sequences, feeling the ship respond with new organic precision to his commands. The hybrid vessel had evolved beyond its original design, much like its crew. Phoenix Station's massive doors parted as they prepared for departure, their enhanced systems primed for their first official operation. All systems optimal, Arya reported as their Organish hybrid hull pulsed with Ventaxian energy. Course plotted to target coordinates. The transformed ship accelerated from the station, its distinctive bioluminescent signature marking the beginning of its new purpose. Gary's neural interface registered the harmonic resonance between crew and vessel as they prepared for hyperspace transition. Spatial metrics calculated, Lyra announced from navigation, her enhanced capabilities providing unprecedented precision. Jump coordinates verified, Vex confirmed, monitoring their defensive systems. Their hybrid vessel crossed the hyperspace threshold, carrying its uniquely adapted crew toward their next objective. The successful integration of organic and mechanical systems had created something entirely new, a ship transformed by the very test subjects it had helped rescue.